The Enchanted Land, A Journey with the Mystics of India. Written by David Christopher Lane. Narrated by Cliff Truesdell. Preface. I went looking for him and lost myself. The drop merged with the sea. Who can find it now? Looking and looking for him, I lost myself. The sea merged with the drop. Who can find it now? Kabir. This book was almost entirely written in the 1980s, when I was still in my 20s. Each chapter was originally published as an article in a specialized magazine or journal. The chapters on the sage, saint, yogi, mother, wrestler, and master were first published in Fate magazine between 1984 and 1986. The chapter on fakir was published in 1982 in Laughing Man magazine. The chapter on the journey was published in 1986 in the journal Understanding Cults and Spiritual Movements. As the reader will immediately notice, this work is decidedly romantic and represents a significant departure from my other, more critical writings. All writing and all speech, as Mikhail Naimi so rightly points out in his lovely tale, The Book of Mirdad, is at best an honest lie. We never actually get the whole truth and nothing but the truth when we read books. Instead, we get partial glimpses, which, if we are lucky, reveal something of the majesty of our existence. But even when certain books unlock an insight, at that very same moment they conceal something important from us. Why? Because all symbol systems, from mathematics to Sanskrit, are less than the totality from which they arise and to which they ultimately point. Although I am mostly known as a skeptic, especially among followers of new religions, I don't think that skepticism is the only approach to life, or necessarily the most important vehicle to discover truth. I think we are, as our evolution indicates, a wide spectrum of possibilities, and there may well be several ways to approach life's mysteries. One of those approaches that I certainly advocate and champion is interior exploration. That is, the day-to-day practice of focusing one's consciousness to discover phenomenologically the source from which such awareness arises. This type of practice is usually known in the East as meditation, and in the West as ceaseless prayer. In both instances, however, the neophyte is attempting to explore a hitherto unknown world. Science is in many ways the extension of our five senses to explore the world without. Mystical religion is in many ways the inversion of our senses, to explore the world within. They are not necessarily mutually exclusive, even though certain scientists and certain religionists have tried to act and argue as if they were. I have chosen to write about these yogis, saints, and sages of India because they are pioneers of going within. They are heroes of the inner quest. In physics, we admire Newton and Einstein, because they transformed the way we see the universe without. Likewise, in religion and philosophy, we admire a Socrates, a Buddha, a Jesus, a Shankara, a Kabir, because they have transfigured the way we see the universe within. Hence, the underlying bias of this book is that I really do believe there is something beyond the rational mind, and that it is worth investing our time and energy in studying it. Now, I don't think the reader should buy my line of argument, hook, line, and sinker, and somehow believe that what these yogis and saints say is true. Rather, I would enjoin the reader to severely doubt what has been outlined here. Doubt it so much that you would want to conduct the experiment for yourself instead of relying on second-hand reports. Doubt it so much that you would want to learn the necessary technique for consciously inducing a near-death experience, to see and hear what mystics have been proclaiming for millennia. Doubt it so much, in sum, that you would want to test the veridicality of mysticism itself. We talk so much of testing in the sciences, but very few of us ever take up the challenge. Instead, we rely on authorities to convince us of the truth of calculus, the truth of quantum mechanics, the truth of molecular biology, the truth of evolution. Well, in each of those wonderful endeavors, which have greatly improved humankind's understanding of the universe at large, there comes a point when one has to devote time and energy to understand the intricacies involved. To go within, to engage the voyage of light and sound, to apprehend stages of consciousness beyond the waking state, demands exactly the same tremendous effort that we exert in any academic endeavor. So this book is actually the natural extension of a truly skeptical mind, which believes that science is not so much a body of facts as it is a facet of being, an approach to discovery. Yes, there is a science to interior states. Yes, there is a method to the madness of mystics. And if we have the courage to follow science in the outer world, we should also have the same courage to follow science in the inner world. To be sure, this book does not tell the whole story, or even a fraction of the adventure, but it does lay out an alternative route for those interested in taking religious claims seriously. Although each of the mystics mentioned in this book may be partially a product of his or her time, with all the social and human limitations that such contexts entail, they do nevertheless point to something unique in human understanding. They point to a region well beyond the farthest reaches of our telescopes and our microscopes. They point to our very beings. Strange, is it not, that we have spent almost all our time looking for the secret of life by extending our senses into the phenomenal cosmos, and have spent comparatively little, if any time, probing the source from which these visions first arise. According to sages and saints, we are like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, who is trying to find her way back to Kansas, only to learn, after a long and arduous journey to the Emerald City, that alas, her means of transportation was with her all along. Her precious ruby slippers. We too have ruby slippers. It is our very consciousness. By exploring it directly, we too may have the ability to go home. That home, the saints argue, is the source of our longing, our yearning, and our nostalgia. That home, the saints argue, is our enchanted land. Postscript. It has been nearly 3 decades since I first wrote this book, and since that time, I have noticed that there is a growing interest in meditation and consciousness studies. However, seekers have become more skeptical and seasoned in their approaches, which I believe is altogether good. Each of the mystics mentioned in this book are now deceased except one, Tripta Devi, Yogini Mataji, and she has more or less refused to act as a guru and has gone into relative seclusion. David Christopher Lane, June 12, 2014. Introduction. One cannot comprehend him through reason, even if one reasoned for ages. Nanak. Penetrating the heart of many human beings is a great nostalgia, an unending longing for something that this world and its pleasures cannot satisfy. Such is the intensity of this yearning that anyone who surrenders to it fully is forever transformed. Indeed, the great nostalgia is the evolutionary call within man for that which ultimately transcends him. Rare, though, is the individual who truly listens to this plaintive call. Those who resist it are called ordinary, normal, worldly. Those who hear its message are termed sages, saints, or yogis. 3 outstanding Indian mystics of the 20th century consciously submitted themselves to the unquenchable flame that burns in the soul of innumerable human beings. Theirs were heroic journeys that entailed tremendous perseverance, concentration, and steadfast devotion. They endured a process that defies description, transcending the cloud of unknowing, the dark night of the soul, the hanging on the gallows, to achieve the summit of evolution itself, self-realization. Each mystic, however, followed a different path. Ramana Maharshi, the sage of Arunachala, was an exponent of Jnana Yoga, the way of knowledge. Huzur Sawan Singh, the saint of Beas, was a master of Shabad Yoga. the way of sound and light. And Paramahansa Yogananda, the yogi of America, was an adept of Kriya Yoga, the way of action. Although their paths were unique, Ramana Maharshi, Huzur Sawan Singh, and Paramahansa Yogananda had much in common. They had all lived during the time of Mahatma Gandhi, witnessing the independence of India, became exceptionally well known as spiritual masters, stressed the need for love and devotion, and died within a 4-year span of each other, 1950, 1948, and 1952, respectively. To understand their life and work is to get a profound glimpse of our own infinite heritage, because unlike the countless charlatans who parade around the world as masters, Ramana Maharshi, Huzur Sawan Singh, and Paramahansa Yogananda were genuine mystics. Hearkening to the soul's inner cry for peace, these men did not rest or find solace until they had uncovered the very truth of existence. Imbued with the great nostalgia, the sage, the saint, and the yogi returned to their native land, a country where there is no time or space, and where love alone is the supreme law. Chapter 1. The Sage, Ramana Maharshi. There is no greater mystery than this, that being the reality ourselves, we seek to gain reality. We think there is something binding our reality, and it must be destroyed before the reality, truth, is gained. It is ridiculous. A day will dawn when you will laugh at your effort. That which is on the day of laughter is also now. Ramana. Almost all human beings have a sense of self, or I-ness, which permeates their consciousness. It is an undeniable feeling of individuality. Yet what exactly is this I motivating our day-to-day actions? Is it a physical sensation, an outcome of material processes, a mental perception based upon a unification of similar thoughts and ideas, or a bracketing in consciousness itself, an illusory whirlpool in a field of infinite awareness? All of us, at one time or another, have asked, "Who am I?" But few have experientially explored the query with a vigor that Ramana Maharshi did as a youth almost turning 17. Instead of accepting temporary answers to the question, Ramana dedicated his inquiry with such zeal that he did not yield until the ultimate truth was realized. The remarkable feature of Ramana's enlightenment in 1896 in a small room in Madurai, South India, was its utter simplicity. Paul Brunton, in his book, A Search in Secret India, retells it. He, Ramana, was sitting alone one day in his room when a sudden and inexplicable fear of death took hold of him. He became acutely aware he was going to die, although outwardly he was in good health. He stretched his body prone upon the floor, fixed his limbs in the rigidity of a corpse, closed his eyes and mouth. Well then, said I to myself, this body is dead. It will be carried stiff to the burning ground, and then reduced to ashes. But with the death of the body, am I dead? Is the body I? This body is now silent and stiff, but I continue to feel the full force of myself apart from its condition. These are the words with which the Maharshi described the weird experience through which he passed. He seemed to fall into a profound conscious trance, wherein he became merged into the very source of selfhood, the very essence of being. He understood quite clearly that the body was a thing apart, and that the I remained untouched by death. The true self was very real, but it was so deep down in man's nature that hitherto he had ignored it. From this transcendental encounter, Ramana emerged a new person. No longer interested in the outward activity of his family and peers, he embarked on a journey to Arunachala, the holy red mountain in Tiruvannamalai, South India, which is a highly revered sacred spot among Hindus. The young sage arrived in the latter part of 1896, and he never left the area until his death in 1950. Subsisting on a meager diet, possessing no material wealth, Ramana spent his entire life at Arunachala, meditating or teaching others the way of knowledge. What had he realized that was so profound that it dramatically changed his life and the lives of thousands of others? The answer is deceptively simple. The world arises in a field of consciousness. There is no beginning and ending to consciousness. That very consciousness is our true self. Ramana's understanding was not born of a long intellectual quest, but was based entirely on an experiential realization which resulted from a direct inquiry into the process of death. At every level of awareness, Ramana intuited that there was one all-pervading being. This being, the real and permanent I, is the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of the illusory ego, the small I, which blinds man to his true self. In our ignorance, we believe ourselves restricted to a particular form. In other words, I am this body, I am this person, I am this personality, and so on. Yet the truth is quite the opposite. We are not things, as all particularizations are, but contents within the larger stream of consciousness. Our ordinary waking state illustrates this point. How do you know the world exists? How do you know you have a body? Surprisingly, the answer is because you are aware, not because the body and the world reveal themselves as ontologically real. Put simply, without awareness, you cannot know that anything exists, much less the relative status of physical properties. Descartes, saying, "I think, therefore I am," glimpsed this fact. It is not thinking that creates I am, but rather thinking confirms a priori the underlying I am or awareness which allows for mental processes. The world is not material. It is an aspect of consciousness. Our small eyes do not create consciousness. They are merely products of it. Hence, Ramana Maharshi's realization should not be equated with solipsism, the philosophical theory that the self can know nothing but its own modifications, and that the self is the only existent thing. As he clearly indicates, the ego, small I, does not create the world, nor is the world unreal. Quite the contrary. Ramana stresses finding the source from which the world and the ego appear permanent and real. That source, Ramana argued, is pure awareness, the true self of man, as Ramana himself so graciously said. There is only one consciousness, and this, when it identifies itself with the body, projects itself through the eyes and sees the surrounding objects. The individual is limited to the waking state. He expects to see something different and expects the authority of his senses. He will not admit that he who sees the objects seen and the act of seeing are all manifestations of the same consciousness, the I, real self. Meditation helps to overcome the illusion that the self is something to see. Actually, there is nothing to see. How do you recognize yourself now? Do you have to hold a mirror up in front of yourself to recognize yourself? The awareness is itself the I. Realize it, and that is the truth. The beauty of Ramana's insight is that it was exemplified in his everyday actions. Although he spoke little, usually in Tamil, and then in terse and epigrammatic terms, Ramana's presence was tangible to the human beings and animals alike. Perhaps the most heartwarming stories surrounding Ramana's life concern his kindness towards animals. Monkeys, dogs, and even cows were counted among his devotees, as they were peculiarly drawn to him. As well as being a strict vegetarian, Ramana always treated lower life forms with the utmost respect. Once when he stepped on a hornet's nest, he apologized verbally and did not move his leg while it was being severely stung. For most Westerners, the logic of karma extends only to human beings, but for Ramana it extended everywhere. He realized that all forms are manifestations of the one supreme spirit. B.V. Narasimha Swami recounts Ramana's relations with animals. A characteristic of Maharshi that strikes every visitor is the way in which he deals with animals, especially those living in the ashram, the spiritual retreat built around Ramana Maharshi. Lakshmi has come. Give her rice food at once, he says, looking from the hall through the window. And the newcomer thinks that some young girl had to be given her meal. But presently steps in a cow, answering to the name Lakshmi. Have the boys been given their food, he asks again. Probably there are little boys brought up here or come for a visit, one would think. But presently, a couple of dogs answer a whistle, and each is told to take his plate of rice. One watches the Maharshi for days, months, and years, and never finds him calling any of these animals it, or treating it as less than a human being. Such was Ramana's love that even dangerous animals and reptiles did not harm him. A number of accounts relate that snakes, including cobras, reacted calmly in his presence. Ramana once remarked, "We have come to their residence and have no right to disturb them. They would not molest us if we are well disposed towards them." Naturally, if such benevolence was shown to animals, one can imagine how considerate Ramana was toward human beings. One poignant example of Ramana's ahimsa, nonviolence towards living things, arose when his ashram was robbed by 6 thieves on June 26, 1924. When one of his devotees wanted to strike back violently at the robbers, Ramana replied, "Let these thieves play their role, dharma. We shall stick to ours, non-violence. Let them do what they like. It is for us to bear and forbear. Let us not interfere with them." When Ramana was hit on the left thigh by one of the ruffians, he had once said, "If you are not satisfied yet, you may strike the other leg also." As it turned out, the thief stopped. Eventually, all the robbers were captured by the police after their escape from the ashram. Explaining his stance in the incident, Ramana commented, "These thieves are only misguided men. They are blinded by ignorance. But let us note what is right and stick to it. Sometimes your teeth suddenly bite out your own tongue. Do you knock them out in consequence?" Ramana Maharshi did not formally accept any disciples, nor did he see himself as a guru or master. Nevertheless, both in India and abroad, he attracted a large following of people impressed by his teachings and touched by his radiance. Among Ramana's admirers were Dr. Carl Gustav Jung, the famous psychologist, Dr. Paul Brunton, whose book, A Search in Secret India, made Ramana Maharshi well known, Arthur Osborne, his eventual biographer, and T.M.P. Mahadevan, the respected Indian philosopher. After a long illness, Ramana died of cancer at 8:47 p.m. on April 14, 1950. At that exact moment, writes A. Devaraja Mudaliar, a meteor-like flash, leaving a trail of some yards long, appeared in the sky to the southwest and moved northeastwards toward Arunachala Hill, where it disappeared behind the peak. The light that was Bhagavan, Ramana, just merged into the pillar of light that was and is Arunachala, the sacred hill. True to his insight, Ramana did not grieve over the decay of his physical body, but humorously referred to the cancerous growth on his arm as lingam. In India, the lingam represents Shiva, the destroyer god. As to where he will go after death, Ramana Maharshi replied, "They say that I am dying, but I am not going away. Where could I go? I am here." For the great sage of Arunachala, there was no death. He realized that the true self of man is both birthless and timeless. Chapter 2. The Saint. Sawan Singh. The human body is a cage. Within it is imprisoned the spirit or soul, which is like a bird in a cage. The bird is in love with the cage, and is always singing songs of attachment for the earth. If, however, the covers or bodies are cast off from the soul, The bird begins to taste the truth, and the cage is shattered into fragments. Sawan. Whatever the earth may temporarily offer us as human beings, one thing is certain. It is not our permanent home. Regardless of scientific and technological advances, the physical universe as we know it will sometime be unable to sustain life, either reaching a point of maximum entropy, a degradation of matter and energy to an ultimate state of inert uniformity, or collapsing in upon itself, taking in its course every living creature. Despite the misplaced hopes of evolutionists, humankind has a limited future, perhaps only a few million years. We are, in fact, only visitors to a land that is destined to die. Where then is our true home? According to genuine mystics from both East and West, humanity's real abode is neither physical or mental, but wholly spiritual. That is, we are denizens of an infinite realm of light and love who have lost sight of our essential nature, mistaking a drop for an ocean, a shack for a kingdom, a stone for a jewel. As Ken Wilber eloquently writes, "In the beginning, there is only consciousness, as such, timeless, spaceless, infinite, and eternal. For no reason that can be stated in words, a subtle ripple is generated in this infinite ocean. This ripple could not in itself detract from infinity, for the infinite can embrace any and all entities. But this subtle ripple, awakening to itself, forgets the infinite sea of which it is just a gesture. The ripple, therefore, feels set apart from infinity, isolated, separate. As ripples in this infinite sea of awareness, we have grasped that which is impermanent, the body and the world. An authentic master is one who has fully realized his or her prior oneness with the ocean, transcendent reality, and who manifests it in his or her outward life." Hazur Sawan Singh, 1858 to 1948, honorifically called the Great Master of Beas, was such a realized soul. From early childhood, he was irresistibly drawn to seek the eternal abode. Born in a Sikh family, Sawan was brought up with the sacred scriptures of his religion. The Guru Granth Sahib, a compilation of mystical poetry written by the Sikh gurus and other Indian and Persian mystics, which spoke at length about an inner music and light that lead a soul back to God. Deeply religious, Sawan Singh associated with a number of holy men whom he questioned about the nature of man's spiritual quest. None of these mystics could satisfy his longing. Sawan was looking for a master of the highest degree. Ironically, it was the Satguru, true spiritual teacher, who found him instead. Sawan Singh recalls, "I was fond of satsang and parmarth, spiritual topics, from my childhood. I often associated with sadhus and religious people. Later, I transferred to Murray Hills. One day as I was supervising my work, I saw an old Sikh going up a hill with a middle-aged lady. Little did I think he was going to be my master. He was none other than Baba Ji himself." Baba Jaimal Singh, one of the spiritual successors to Shiv Dayal Singh, the founder of Radha Swami. And the lady was Bibi Ruko. This I did not know at the time, but found out later that Baba Ji said to Bibi Ruko, referring to me, "It is for his sake that we have come here." To which Bibi Ruko replied, "But he has not even greeted you." Baba Ji said to her, "What does the poor fellow know yet? On the fourth day you will come to us." On the fourth day, I went to attend satsang, the meeting of Baba Jaimal Singh. After several conferences with Baba Ji, I was thoroughly convinced and received initiation into the secrets of Surat Shabda Yoga from him on the 15th day of October, 1894. The turning point in Sawan Singh's life came when he met his spiritual guru, Baba Jaimal Singh, and took initiation under him in the path of Surat Shabda Yoga, union of the soul within the divine inner sound. Such was Sawan's readiness that in just over 9 years he became an acknowledged master within the Sant Mat and Radhaswami traditions. In fact, except for Maharaj Charan Singh, the Satguru at Beas from 1951 to 1990, Sawan Singh attracted the largest following of any Shabda Yoga master in history, initiating more than 125,000 people into the mystic practice. It is impossible to understand Huzur Sawan Singh's spiritual achievements without first noting that they were due to his close and devoted relationship with his guru. Babaji looked after Sawan's worldly and spiritual welfare, stressing the need to transcend the physical frame altogether and attach one's consciousness to the inner light and sound which reverberates at the third eye. By following this stream of celestial currents, the soul gets released from the body and mind and ascends towards its real abode. Examples of Babaji's teachings can be gleaned from his letters to Sawan, which have been published in an exquisite book entitled Spiritual Letters. Babaji instructs Sawan Singh. You are always with me, and the real form of the Sadguru, true teacher, is the Shabda, life stream via light and sound, and that is always with you. I am very pleased with you. He is always with you. You should have no fears, because kings and emperors all owe their power to the Lord. Wherever you go, keep in touch with me. You are my very dear child. You will go to the Sachkhand, the realm of truth, in my company, via the inner Shabda. Listen every day to the Shabd Dun with love and devotion. Make your abode therein, and let your mind be merged in the Dun, inner sound. Then you will enjoy Ras, spiritual pleasure. It is not a thing to be described. The Surat, soul, will experience and feel it. How did Huzur Sawan Singh succeed in teaching Sachkhand, the eternal realm of truth according to the saints, which is beyond time and space? First, by coming into contact with an authentic master. Second, by explicitly following the instructions of his teacher. Daily meditation, pure moral life, surrender of the body, mind, and soul to the living presence of Shabda, etc. And third, by realizing experientially that his real self is neither a body nor a mind, but an effulgent wave of consciousness. Because of the soul's age-old attachment to the body and mind, spiritual awakening manifests in a series of stages which take the form, more or less, of an inner journey. Thus, the path of light and sound entails leaving the physical body at will and entering into the subtle regions of existence, hitherto unexplored by human beings. To do this, one must penetrate the veil of darkness behind the eye center, variously termed the third eye, the inner door, the single eye, while living, so that when physical death comes, the soul will not be duped into settling for one of the lesser regions of light. When Christ said 2,000 years ago, "In my Father's house there are many mansions," the saints interpret this as reflecting the inherent hierarchy of afterlife experiences. The key to the practice of Surat Shabda Yoga is not to be detained or led astray by any sights or sounds on the upward journey, but to follow the celestial current to its terminal apex, where all of creation has its transcendental source, as Huzur Sawan Singh tells one of his Western disciples. When you sit in meditation, see that the mind is at rest and does not go out and unnecessarily think about other things. When, by repetition of the names, Simran, with attention fixed in the eye focus, you have become unconscious of the body below the eyes, then your attention will catch the sound current. Select the sound resembling the church bell and discard all other sounds. Then slowly, your soul will leave the body and collect in the eyes and become strong. Then fix your attention in the biggest star, so much that you forget everything else except the sound and the star. Then this star will burst, and you will see what is within and beyond. After crossing the star, you will have to cross the sun and the moon, inner manifestations of light. Then you will see the form of the Master. When that form becomes steady, it will reply. This form will reply to all of your inquiries and guide you to higher stages. These stars are of the first sky only, and Hindu philosophers will have spoken of 7 skies, in universes of elevating degrees. After crossing the star, the sun, and the moon, you will see that form which will never leave you, not even for a moment. Finally, the soul, unencumbered by any bodies, gross, astral, or causal, will merge with the Supreme, achieving a state that defies description. The drop merges in the ocean, the wave flows back to the sea, the eye reunites with its source. One primary obstacle, though, in the soul's journey back to God, is that at each stage it must detach itself from the surrounding environment and ascend. In other words, to progress, one's separate identity must die. To go beyond this world, it is necessary to die to the attractions and pleasures that hold one down to the physical body. For the wave to realize its prior union with the sea, it must forego its exclusive attachment as a separate, distinct entity. Ken Wilber elaborates. For in order to find that utter peace, the ripple would have to return to the ocean, dissolve back into radiant infinity, forget itself, and remember the Absolute. But to do so, the ripple would have to die. It would have to accept the death of its separate self-sense, and it is terrified of this. It is for this very reason, the fear of dying, that most inhabitants of the earth do not venture beyond its domain. Falsely believing that we are natives in this land, the saints argue that we have set up a substitute for our true home in Sach-Khand. Hence, as Wilber argues, we go about seeking infinity in ways that actually prevent finding it. Instead of finding actual Godhead, the ripple pretends to be God, cosmocentric, heroic, all-sufficient, immortal. Hazur Sawan Singh saw through this drive to create substitutes for real transcendence and consciously surrendered his entire being to the inner Shabda. Because of his exceptional spiritual state, Sawan Singh was appointed by Baba Jaimal Singh to be his successor shortly before his death in 1903. Sawan Singh carried on his master's mission with remarkable aptitude, spreading the message of humankind's divine heritage throughout India. Huzur Sawan Singh established a large spiritual colony on the banks of the Beas River in the Punjab, where Baba Jaimal Singh had resided since the latter part of the 19th century. Sawan named the colony Dera Baba Jaimal Singh in honor of his master. Having been a highly placed engineer himself in military service, Sawan built a number of large buildings in the Dera to house the increasing influx of seekers. The most impressive of these structures, the centerpiece of the Dera, is the Satsangar, built in the 1930s to hold satsangs, meetings, but which soon proved to be too small. Today, the Satsangar is used to hold initiations. Sawan Singh gathered a large following of disciples from around the world. Among his devotees were Dr. Julian P. Johnson, Dr. Pierre Schmidt, Colonel C.W. Sanders, Sant Kirpal Singh, founder of Rouhani Satsang, Sant Darshan Singh, founder of Sawani Kirpal Mission, Baba Somanath, Pritam Das, and several government officials in both the British and Indian ranks. Huzur Sawan Singh died on April 2, 1948, just days after appointing Jagat Singh as his spiritual successor. According to his devotees, he was not a resident of this planet. Since childhood, he had known that his real home was beyond the spatial limitations of the universe. He was a native of Sach-Khand, the eternal realm of truth, a saint who showed humanity that their origin was not of dust, but of light, an unquenchable flame that burns in every living being, for that alone which is everlasting. Chapter 3. The Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda. The Spirit of God, I realized, is exhaustless bliss. His body is countless tissues of light, the entire cosmos, gently luminous, like a city seen afar at night, glimmered within the infinitude of my being. The dazzling light beyond the sharply etched global outlines faded slightly at the farthest edges. There I saw a mellow radiance, ever undiminished. It was indescribably subtle. The planetary pictures were formed of grosser light. Yogananda. Few books in spiritual literature compare to Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi. It is one of those rare works that in a single reading can transform the reader's entire outlook on life. Since its initial printing in 1946, Yogananda's autobiography has continued to enthrall seekers with its fascinating tales of miracles, saints, and astral heavens. I first happened upon the book at our local library when I was barely 12 years old. I don't know exactly why I picked it out that particular day, but I do know that after studying it closely, I was a changed person. No longer could I relegate God to the provinces of my own Catholic religion, for Yogananda demonstrated that even Hindus could personally experience the Lord in all of His or her majesty. Indeed, such was the power of Autobiography of a Yogi that I embarked on a comparative study of the world's religions at the end of my 7th grade in grammar school. Yogananda's life was simply not normal in the usual sense of the word. True, he was brought up in a fairly wealthy Indian family. His father held a high position in the Bengal-Nagpur Railway and attended school with other children his age. But Yogananda, unlike most boys in India or America, had a singular vision since infancy about the purpose and meaning of his life. He wanted to realize God. Yogananda, to quote a popular phrase in mysticism, was God mad. And this madness took him on journeys throughout India to meet saints, yogis, and mystics. Moreover, Yogananda possessed special gifts of the spirit, which indicated, both to him and others, that he was divinely marked as a highly advanced yogi. First, in his earliest memories of infancy, he writes, "Clear recollections came to me of a distant life in which I had been a yogi amid the Himalayan snows. Second, suffering from Asiatic cholera at the age of 8, Yogananda was miraculously healed by looking at a picture of revered Kriya Yoga master Lahiri Mahasaya. Yogananda writes, I gazed at his photograph and saw there a blinding light enveloping my body and the entire room. My nausea and other uncontrollable symptoms disappeared. I was well. At once I felt strong enough to bend over and touch Mother's feet in appreciation of her immeasurable faith in her guru. Mother pressed her head repeatedly against the little picture. And third, Yogananda displayed an incredible strength of will when by sheer thought he made a boil appear on his arm. Yogananda recounts the incident. Uma, his sister, complained of a boil on her leg and fetched a jar of ointment. I smeared a bit of the salve on my forearm. Why do you use medicine on a healthy arm? Well, sis, I feel I'm going to have a boil tomorrow. I'm testing your ointment on the spot where the boil will appear. You little liar. Sis, don't call me a liar until you see what happens in the morning. Indignation filled me. Morning found me with a stalwart boil on the indicated spot. The dimensions of Uma's boil had doubled, which Yogananda had predicted. With a shriek, my sister rushed to Mother. Gravely, Mother instructed me never to use the power of words for doing harm. I have always remembered her counsel and followed it. In Yogananda's quest for God, he met several remarkable holy men, including the saint with 2 bodies, Swami Prananbananda, who reputedly had the ability to bilocate physically, Ganda Baba, the renowned perfume saint, a master at manifesting at will a variety of scents or even flowers, Nagendra Nath Baduri, the levitating saint, whom both Yogananda and his brother, Sananda Lal Ghosh, saw floating in the air while engaged in his meditations, and Master Mahasaya, the blissful devotee of the famous Sri Ramakrishna. None of these saints, however, served as Yogananda's spiritual guru. That was reserved for Sri Yukteswar, whom Yogananda first met in Benares, but whose ashram, spiritual center, was in Serampore and Puri. Under the tutelage of Sri Yukteswar, chief successor to Lahiri Mahasaya, Yogananda became a master of Kriya Yoga, literally, union with the infinite, through a certain action or rite. That is, a psychophysiological method to revitalize the life current within man and to quicken his inner progress. Yogananda writes, Kriya Yoga is an instrument through which human evolution can be quickened. Sri Yukteswar explained to his students. The ancient yogis discovered that the secret of cosmic consciousness is intimately linked with breath mastery. This is India's unique and deathless contribution to the world's treasury of knowledge. The life force, which is ordinarily absorbed in maintaining heart action, must be freed for higher activities by a method of calming and stilling the ceaseless demands of the breath. By mastering the breath through Kriya Yoga, Yogananda was able to open the Ajna chakra, third eye, the inner vision, and leave his physical body at will. When a yogi is absorbed in Sabhikalpa Samadhi, he appears lifeless, seemingly dead, with no sign of bodily movement. This occurs because the life current, soul, is drawn from the body to be active on a different and higher plane of existence. In Nirbhikalpa Samadhi, though, the yogi can commune with God without his appearance of lifelessness. Yogananda, it appears, was adept in both types of samadhis, divine absorption. Perhaps the most interesting, if controversial, story surrounding Yogananda's life concerns the alleged existence of the avatar Babaji, who supposedly has retained his physical form for centuries. This deathless avatar, as Yogananda refers to him, is responsible for initiating Lahiri Mahasaya, 1828 to 1895, into Kriya Yoga and keeping alive the pristine teachings for millennia. According to Autobiography of a Yoga, Babaji is on the same spiritual level as Christ, Buddha, and Krishna. There's one catch, however. Babaji can only be seen when he ordains it. That is, Babaji may have a physical form, but it can be seen only when the avatar desires it to be. Hence, any encounter with Babaji is taken as highly auspicious. Yogananda himself writes of his meeting with Babaji as the most sacred of my human experiences. What are we to make of Babaji? Are the accounts of his perennial existence true? We may never know, of course, unless we personally enter into the higher astral and causal worlds. Yogananda, however, is absolutely convinced of Babaji's existence and goes to some length in his autobiography to convince skeptically minded readers. Yogananda writes of his meeting with Babaji. After much time in prayer, at that moment there came a knock on the door of my Gurpar Road home. Answering the summons, I beheld a young man in the scanty garb of a renunciant. He entered my house. He must be Babaji, I thought, dazed, because the man before me had the features of a young Lahiri Mahasaya. He answered my thought. Yes, I am Babaji. He spoke melodiously in Hindi. Our Heavenly Father has heard your prayer. He commands me to tell you, follow the behests of your guru and go to America. Fear not, you shall be protected. After receiving Babaji's and Sri Yukteswar's blessing, Yogananda departed for America in 1920 to spread the teachings of Kriya Yoga. He was well received and soon became something of a religious celebrity, attracting substantial crowds to his public lectures. In 1935, Yogananda codified his system as the Self-Realization Fellowship, which was chartered under the laws of California as a non-sectarian and non-profit corporation. During his 30 years in America, Yogananda drew several devoted followers, among them James J. Lynn, a wealthy businessman who helped finance the purchase of much of SRF's property holdings. Dayamata, now president of SRF, and Richard Wright, his traveling secretary, and brother of Dayamata. Yogananda also founded two remarkable church centers in California: the SRF Lake Shrine in Pacific Palisades, and the Encinitas Colony overlooking the Pacific Ocean near San Diego. Both places still exist today, wonderful reminders of Yogananda's love for natural beauty. Paramahansa Yogananda died on March 7, 1952, minutes after giving a speech at the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles. Apparently, Yogananda knew in advance of his forthcoming death, having given several hints to his disciples. To one devotee, he said, "My life work is done." And to another, after the death of Sister Guillemata, his most advanced woman initiate, he remarked, "Now that Sister is gone, there is nothing that holds me here." Nevertheless, it came as a surprise to his large following when the news spread that their beloved Pramavatar had finally breathed his last. He was 59 years old. Yet Yogananda demonstrated the truth of Kriya Yoga even after his departure. His physical body did not show the normal signs of decay. It remained in phenomenal state of immutability, according to Harry T. Rowe, mortuary director of Forest Lawn Memorial Park. In a certified letter, he stated, "The absence of any visual signs of decay in the dead body of Paramahansa Yogananda offers the most extraordinary case in our experience. The great yogi of America expected to defy death by transcending it. To his many disciples, Paramahansa Yogananda awoke into a new world, one which his guru, Sri Yukteswar, had predicted would find them together. You and I shall smile together. Finally we shall merge as one in the cosmic beloved. Our smiles shall be his smile." Chapter 4. The Monk. Acharya Sushil Kumar. Do not injure, abuse, oppress, enslave, insult, torment, torture, or kill any creature or living being. Mahavira. When I first learned that renowned Jain monk Acharya Sushil Kumar was involved in the nuclear disarmament rally in New York, I was a bit apprehensive. Though the movement's aims are unquestionably worthwhile, they have only scratched the surface of a much larger problem. All too often, we are besieged with platitudes that only accentuate humankind's troubles, rather than alleviate them. It is noble to want to stop destructive weapons, but what about the mechanism that causes anger, hatred, jealousy, and violence in all of us? Rather than attacking the fundamental situation head-on, the peace movement expends a tremendous amount of energy on elliptical and secondary issues. The real culprit, that which is prompting inhumane actions in the first place, remains untackled. When I met with Sushil Kumar at his center in Long Beach, California, all of my preliminary doubts immediately vanished. For although Sushil Kumar is a strong advocate for nuclear disarmament, the elderly monk is quick to point out that restricting protests just to the crafts of war is short-sighted idealism. Sushil Kumar instead argues for finding the source from which all violent tendencies spring forth. If that area becomes our focus, he contends, then the question of a third world war would not even arise, much less the weapons in preparation for it. But what is it that drives us toward aggression? Is it biologically pre-programmed? Does environment, via our social structures, breed it? I had planned to pose these very questions to Sushil Kumar, but within 5 minutes from our initial meeting, he had already answered them in a brilliant fashion. His response, which is echoed in the ancient Upanishads, is perhaps simpler than one might expect. Wherever there is an other, fear arises. It is the emergent of the separate self, the I-ness, the egoic structure, which is at the heart of man's cruelty, Sushil Kumar stated. With the advent of self-awareness, there also comes the presumption that what is not self, and all of that, The environment, the world, them, generates fear. This fear drives human beings to protect the self from all that threatens its separate existence. But such a strategy can only end in failure and a lifelong narcissism, a denial of the universe and what it offers. Paradoxically, the more one tries to retain the self, the more one eventually loses it in the fight against the not-self, the world. A tragic double bind, indeed. What is the solution? There's only one, Sushil Kumar postulates. Give up the false idea of an independent self and begin to see the creation as one indivisible whole. Unless the individual surrenders its infantile posture towards life, one that is reflected in the obsessive fear of death, then the end of wars, nuclear or conventional, will never be secured. As Sushil Kumar elaborated, it's easy to wage battle with others who have not seen the light or true path, but it is very difficult to conduct the real war, which must take place within ourselves. As our conversation moved from the volatile issue of nuclear proliferation to the ancient Indian philosophy of Jainism, which traces back to at least 600 BC, it became quite apparent to me that Sushil Kumar's whole message was based upon the principle of ahimsa, non-injury and respect toward all living things. Indeed, it is this ideal which has served as the guiding light to his spiritual practice and political ideology, to show loving kindness in all directions, without recoil, to every creature, great or small, ugly or beautiful. This, Sushil Kumar stressed, was the ultimate message of Jainism. However, he emphasized that ahimsa was not the property of any particular faith, but is the spiritual inheritance of all men and women. Throughout history, there have been various degrees of nonviolence which has been practiced, ranging from simple non-injury to human beings alone to the extreme of not hurting insects or vegetation whenever possible. Jainism's uniqueness has been in its rigorous adherence to the doctrine of ahimsa in all forms. Followers of Jainism are strict vegetarians, abstaining from meat, fish, and eggs. They also do not drink alcohol or take mind-altering drugs. Though there is no God as such in Jainism, devotees do hold that the true reality of the universe is spiritual in nature. It is the goal of all devout Jains to extricate their souls from the realm of matter in order to achieve absolute freedom or liberation. To achieve this enlightened state, the disciple must work very hard on herself, circumventing the tendency of the mind to focus outward on the world and its pleasures. Instead of allowing more karmas to accumulate, which only keeps the soul imprisoned, the devotee must give up his evil tendencies and transcend the realm of prakriti, maya, or illusion. Obviously, therefore, Jainism advocates a path of extreme asceticism. Since the obligations are so severe, Jainism has two levels of adherents: the holy man, monk, and the layman. Both divisions, though, have strict injunctions in common, elaborates David G. Bradley in his book, A Guide to the World's Religions. All Jains must take 5 vows: not to harm any living creature, ahimsa; to be absolutely truthful; not to steal; to be chaste in thought and deed; and to practice non-attachment to the world by strict limitation of possessions. For the holy man, the last 2 require celibacy and poverty. Perhaps the main Jain contribution to Indian life is the teaching of ahimsa, a principle followed later by many Hindus and made world famous when advocated by Gandhi. Jains follow it to the extreme. Thus, a monk will sweep a path or a chair with a soft brush before treading or sitting upon it to avoid even the tiniest insect. And hospitals for maimed and sick rats have been maintained. In addition to these 5 vows, the monk has thousands of detailed rules to follow, mostly extensions of the ideal behavior enjoined by the vows. The 3 jewels of right faith, right knowledge, and right conduct are stressed for all. The layman must avoid agriculture, since plowing, for example, kills worms. Hence, most Jains engage in merchandising and banking. Sushil Kumar, though a highly respected leader of Jainism in India, represents a radical departure from the typical Jain monk. He does not wear a face mask, a characteristic of most Jain leaders. Nor does he refrain from traveling by plane or motor car. Rather, his approach is that of a spiritual scientist, trying to display the self-evident truths inherent in all religions. It was for this very purpose that he founded the World Conference of Religions in 1957 in Delhi. Sushil Kumar believes that all religions have some truth, but that no religion has a monopoly on reality. He teaches what is known as Arham Yoga, a meditative discipline which is founded upon Matrika Vidya, the science of sound. In order to practice Arham Yoga, though, it is advised to seek the guidance of a competent master. The Jain Meditation Center explains why. Guru is a Sanskrit word, meaning dispeller of darkness. The authentic guru is that being who takes us from darkness to light, from ignorance to enlightenment. Shaktipat is the ancient formal ceremony whereby the guru and disciple accept each other. They inwardly exchange promises, and the teacher accepts responsibility for the disciple's spiritual progress. The guru-disciple relationship transcends time and space, life and death. It is the spiritual guru who greets and encourages the newly departed soul. If we think of the guru or even speak of him with love, we feel his peace. With the preponderance of gurus in the East and West, and the ostentatiousness of many of them, Bhagwan Rajneesh and his fleet of Rolls-Royces, for example, it was refreshing to see the genuine humility and friendliness of Sushil Kumar. He expresses the very thing which millions of protesters around the world are praying for: peace. We can talk forever about nuclear disarmament, the approaching New Age, or the Aquarian conspiracy, but how many of us can simply be peaceful, happy, and loving? The peace movement must begin in our own hearts. Then, and only then, can it spread and have a lasting effect. Chapter 5. The Fakir, Baba Fakir Chand. Who knows what may happen to me at the time of death? I may enter the state of unconsciousness, enter the state of dreams, and see railway trains. How can I make a claim about my attainment of the ultimate? The truth is that I know nothing. Fakir Chand. I first learned of Baba Fakir Chand in the fall of 1977 when I was looking through the card catalogs at the UCLA Research Library for my genealogical work on the Radhaswami tradition. I found an obscure book by Seth Ashal Singh entitled World Religious Conference, Delhi, 1957, listed under the unclassified section. After tracing the book, I noticed it contained two striking pictures. The first was of Pratap Singh, then the current Satguru of the Namdari Sikhs, and the second one was of Fakir Chand. I immediately surmised that this fakir must be the same one mentioned in Agam Prasad Mathur's Radhaswami Faith, a historical study that I had read earlier. I subsequently wrote to the sage, wondering if he was still alive. The only address I had was Manav Mandir, Hoshiarpur, North India. To my joyful surprise, in less than 4 weeks I received a letter from Fakir Chand, along with 3 books, including one entitled Light on the Anand Yog, written by his guru, Shiv Brat Lal Varman. 7 months of continuous correspondence followed. Finally, I asked Fakir if I could visit him when I came to India in the summer of 1978 as a research assistant to Professor Mark Juergensmeyer, University of California, Berkeley, who had received a grant to study the Radhaswami tradition. My job included visiting the various Gadi Nashins, spiritual heads, in the different Sangats. Fakir kindly agreed to my request, cabling me to come directly from Delhi when I arrived in India. I still vividly remember my first trip to Hoshiarpur. I stood in the crowded Delhi train station, trying to figure out how I could secure passage on the train, when an Indian gentleman behind me asked me about my travel plans. I hesitated, thinking he would know nothing about Fakir or the Bee-Man temple. I was wrong. When I mentioned to the saint and my destination, his face lit up and he said excitedly, "My grandmother is a great devotee of fakirs. In fact, the guru will attend my sister's wedding in a few days. I will cancel my earlier train ride so I can go with you and guide your way." Although I never did meet the mysterious gentleman again, he did help me arrange my passage and told me something of the interesting city of Hoshiarpur, which is near the foothills of the Himalayas. After an 8-hour train ride through the night to Hoshiarpur, I took a bicycle rickshaw from the train station to Manav Mandir. The scent of the morning air and the lingering dawn light through the clouds had a strange impact on me. I felt as if I had entered a foreign homeland. An odd sense of déjà vu affected me. I spotted a photograph of Fakir Chand inside the entranceway that immediately caught my eye. Why does he look so familiar to me? I pondered to myself. Then, at the moment of my arrival, an old devotee of fakirs enthusiastically greeted me, saying, "We have been expecting you. You have come on a most auspicious occasion, Guru Purnima Day." I was immediately surrounded by a number of Indians who were quite eager for me to have the darshan of Fakir, who was then in deep samadhi. At first glance, Fakir Chand did indeed seem completely unconscious of this world. But when I bowed in front of him, he rose up, fully awake, and hit me on the back strongly with his hand, giving me an affectionate welcome. Fakir's Bee-Man temple was unique. Instead of just pictures of gurus who belonged to Fakir's direct lineage, there were photographs of masters from almost all of the Radhaswami lineages, including a huge color portrait of Sawan Singh, the late Gadi Nashin at Beas. Adorning the end of the hall was a life-sized statue of Fakir Chand's guru, Maharishi Shiv Brat Lal. After a little rest, I was invited to attend Fakir's morning satsang that was held outside due to the large crowd. The Sewadars in charge kindly gave me a chair to sit on, since I was not used to sitting cross-legged. I can never forget Fakir's animated expressions during the satsang. As the crowd was singing shabads, hymns of devotion, Fakir, with his eyes closed, would swing his hands as if conducting a concert. Then, after completion of the shabads, Fakir spoke in Hindi about the various aspects of Sant Mat. Surprisingly, given my limited knowledge of the language, I understood the gist of Fakir Chand's discourse, one which is echoed throughout his writings. When I came to this line as a guru, my eyes were opened. Why? Because those who regard me as their master, my image appears to them in their meditation, in their dreams, and even in their state of wakefulness, and guides them, whereas I remain unaware of all of this. A lady sent me a letter stating that she was having a bath in a river in Kashmir. Suddenly, she records, a wave of water came and took her away for 10 or 15 yards. She writes that when she was drowning, I appeared there, caught her hand, and brought her out of the river and said, "You have yet to do a lot of work." She has written to me so as to know what work she is to do. Now, neither did I go there to save her, nor did I tell her that she has yet to do a lot of work. This is the secret. Later that same afternoon, I had a personal interview with Fakir Chand that lasted several hours. Although Fakir's native language was Hindi, Urdu, he spoke fluent English, so there was no need for a translator. I asked Fakir a number of questions, which related to guru succession. For example, how many other disciples beside yourself served as gurus after Shiv Brat Lal's death? But he kept turning the discussion to a more personal side, asking me about my own meditation practice, ethical life, and so forth. Fakir was eager to share the gist of his own quest so that my own spiritual journey may be smoother. I had the sense during our conversation that I could ask any question that I wanted. One impression that has always stayed with me about Fakir Chand was his remarkable unpretentiousness. Despite his Brahmin caste, Fakir appeared to treat each and every individual as his own dear son or daughter. In my case, due to my young age, 22 years old at the time, Fakir called me a son, rather a grandson. His obvious warm regard and affection endeared him to me almost immediately. Below are a few questions and answers from that first interview. Question: when did you start working as a guru? In 1918 or after your Guruji died? Answer: no, not during his lifetime, and this was out of sheer veneration for him, even though I had his orders to deliver discourses and initiate people. He was running an ashram of his own. I wanted to speak the stark truth. Though Huzur Datta Dayalji had given hints about the reality in his writings, verbally he did not always speak out bluntly. In his last discourse before death, he made it clear that he did not project himself in the vision seen by his disciples. This secret he revealed only in the last discourse, because if such things are told all too abruptly, people would not come. Question: was Nandu Singh commissioned by Shiv Brat Lal to do this work of satsang? Answer: yes, he too was commissioned by Hazur Datta Dayalji, just as I was. Nandu Baiji was the disciple of Hazur Datta Dayalji, like me, but I joined in 1905, and he in 1919. Bhai Nandu Singh had his field of work in the Andhra Pradesh. Once I went to Nandu Singh's house. He was holding satsang in his house. I told him he should not hold satsang in his house. When he inquired about the cause, I said to him, "Your form appears to your disciples. Are you in the know of it?" He said, "No." Then I told him that those people would bring offerings to him just because his form appeared to them in their abhyas. So the offerings that he would get, he would give to his children. Then there would be trouble to his children. After that, he did not hold meetings in his house. Question: is there anyone else commissioned by your spiritual father to do this work? Answer: I do not know. So far I am the first man, rather the leading one. There are others also. Even my own disciples are doing this work at different places in the country. I, for one, do not initiate people. I simply explain the truth. Those who believe in my words are benefited. Fakir and I soon became fast friends. Each day he would talk with me for 2 or 3 hours about his spiritual realizations. One morning, however, was quite special. The old sage was lying down on his back in samadhi with a white sheet over him. For all practical purposes, at least to those devotees sitting next to him, Fakir Chand was out of his body, enjoying the bliss of higher inner regions. I was sitting in a Western-style chair in quiet observation when, to my astonishment, Fakir descended from his contemplative state, pulled down the sheet covering him, and looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I want to speak with you." What followed was one of the most penetrating and enlightening discourses I have ever heard. For, unlike most gurus in India, Fakir Chand revealed in detail the secret behind many inner visions and miracles. Now you see, no Jesus Christ comes from without in anybody's visions. No Rama, no Krishna, no Buddha, and no Baba Fakir comes from without to anybody. The visions are only because of the impressions and suggestions that a disciple has already accepted in his mind. These impressions and suggestions appear before him like a dream. Nobody comes from without. This is the plain truth. Look here. There is a woman. She has got a son. That child loves that lady as his mother. The child will have nothing in his mind against that lady. He will adore her. He will love her and respect her. The brother of that lady comes. he has different thoughts for her in his mind. When her husband meets her, he carries different feelings in his mind about her, and when a friend of that lady meets, his mind is different. From the same lady, different individuals get different types of love, affection, and adoration. So whatever you have to gain, it is all with this faith and belief that your ideal is perfect. Whatever you gain it as per your own faith and belief. As a child gets motherly love from his mother, similarly, the husband gets a wife's love from the same lady. You always have this faith and firm belief that your guru is within you. Do not think him ever away from you in any human form. Guru is knowledge or correct understanding. It was during my numerous conversations with Fakir that I learned of his radical understanding of the truth of our existence. Although Fakir taught the practice of Sarat Shabad Yoga, he also emphasized the importance of Jnana Yoga. In a personal letter to me, dated March 8, 1978, Fakir described the process for enlightenment. Whatever I have realized is that one should research his own self. Unless this is done, one cannot get peace. Nobody is in a position to know the secrecy of nature. I try to make a man realize himself. Know thyself by thyself. To realize one's own self, one has to penetrate within himself, leaving the physical, mental, and spiritual senses. And what will remain behind is thy own self. And that self is eternal. Visitor of body, mind, and spirit, that self is a part of the infinity, which no one can know except he loses his own identity and merges himself in the reality which is named by different sects and religions by different names. Some call it Allah, some call it nameless, formless, Akal, Anami, Ram, or Radhaswami. Try to penetrate within yourself. Leave physical senses by repeating a holy name given to you by your guru without moving your tongue. Meditate on the image of your guru. Concentration on the image is necessary for leaving mental vibrations. Then comes light and sound. Try to know what is that who sees light within or listens to sound within. Then one can realize who he is. His search ends, and one becomes the same reality. During my stay at Manav Mandir, I had the opportunity to closely observe Fakir Chand and some of his personal habits. I noticed the following. 1. Fakir Chand did not live at Manav Mandir, but made his residence in a small abode several blocks away from the ashram. 2. Fakir arrived very early in the morning at Manav Mandir, usually in a bicycle rickshaw. 3. Fakir would go into samadhi, deep meditation, every day, and his followers would sit around him also meditating. 4. Fakir Chand's withdrawal of consciousness was such that only the whites of his eyes would be visible. 5. Fakir smoked a hookah, a water pipe filled with tobacco, in the afternoon, at which time he would also go through his correspondence. 6. Fakir was of small stature, though his health was exceptional for a man in his 90s. 7. At times, Fakir's eyes would look as if they were deep ocean blue, and at other times hazel brown. 8. Fakir attracted a number of highly educated disciples, including university professors, lawyers, judges, and doctors. Devotees of other gurus respected Fakir's satsangs. I noticed that Fakir Chand had admirers from Beas, Agra, Delhi, Tarn Tarn, and other Sant-Mat centers, several of whom I personally interviewed. The last day of my stay with Baba Fakir Chand is deeply engraved upon my heart. Fakir was lying down in a back room when I was ushered in to pay my farewell respects. The old master took my face in his hands, looked intensely into my eyes, and reiterated what he had said upon my arrival. You are like my son, rather a grandson. I wish you to be practical in your life. There are two schools of thought. The aim of one school is to bring people into its circle. They bring people into their church. But I remove people from the church also. To be born in a church is a blessing, but to die in a church is a curse. You cannot fully understand my views as yet, because you have to do a lot of work in your worldly life as yet. The present devotional ideas which you have now will change after some years, and then, in your old age, you will come to this line. This is my prophecy about you. Fakir gave me a message to pass on to Maharaj Charan Singh of Radhaswami Beas, for whom he had the highest respect, since I was going to attend his satsang the following day. Fakir then went on to say things of such a personal nature that I keep them forever locked within myself. As I got up, after pronaming at his feet, I knew that I would never fail to remember the compassion and beauty of this great, unknowing sage of Hoshiarpur. After my brief stay at Manav Mandir in the summer of 1978, I never saw Baba Fakir Chand again. I had hoped to entertain the 95-year-old saint in my home in September 1981 during his 5th United States tour. But 2 weeks before his planned visit to Southern California, Fakir Chand suffered cardiac arrest, went into a coma, and died 3 weeks later in a Pittsburgh hospital. I was blessed, though, with a telephone call from Fakir Chand a few weeks before his death, but it was the last time I heard his radiant voice. Fakir's death came as a shock to many of his Indian devotees. However, it appears that Fakir Chand knew of his forthcoming death. During a tape-recorded conversation, a few days before his trip to America, the old saint was asked when he was coming back to India. Fakir, in an unusually cryptic reply, responded, "I will come back in a black box." And so it was. In the fall of 1981, Fakir Chand's casket arrived at the Manav Mandir ashram in Hoshiarpur, North India, for final cremation rites. Since my visit to Manav Mandir and reading Baba Fakir Chand's books many times, I became convinced that his life and work should be more known in the West. I was pulled to share his realizations, primarily because they shed a clearer, more sure light on the spiritual path. Devotees of each and every line of spiritual practice, from Surat Shabad Yoga to Advaita Vedanta, I felt could benefit from the keen, perceptive, and above all, frank insights of Fakir Chand. His wealth of experience in the realm of meditation, so honestly and painstakingly revealed, is of unique advantage for scholars interested in transpersonal psychology or consciousness studies. As I write these last sentences, I do so with deep sadness that one of the greatest yogis of the 20th century is no longer physically with us. Perhaps the best tribute we can bestow on Fakir is to truly learn the message that he lived and preached for over 50 years. The malady, the ills, and the sadness human society suffers are not because we do not remember God, or do not go to the temple, or mosque, or church, or to a gurdwara, but because man does not learn to be man in the correct sense. Therefore, my advice to all those who seek entrance into Sant Mat and want to transcend the inner stages of spirituality is, first of all, make sincere efforts to become a man in the real sense of the word, because a pure mind is the prerequisite for spiritual advancement. This is why I have named my ashram Manav Mandir in Hoshiarpur. We can only be spiritual if we are true human beings first. Chapter 6. The Mother, Tripta Devi. I do not like delivering satsang. I am fed up with guruism. I will not give namdan, initiation, to anyone. Yogini Mataji. Since Baba Fakir Chand's death in September of 1981, a number of his disciples serve as gurus. Outstanding among these is a middle-aged woman respectfully called Yogini Mataji, who currently lives in a small room on the 3rd floor of the Manav Mandir ashram in Hoshiarpur. On my second trip to India in the winter of 1981 and 1982, I was not informed beforehand that Mataji was living within the temple compound. So it was a pleasant surprise when I arrived at Manav Mandir to learn from Dr. J. L. Jora, the present administrator of the ashram, that one of Fakir Chand's most advanced disciples was living only a few yards away across the courtyard. I could tell by Jora's expression that he regarded her as a remarkable woman. Knowing that saints seldom talk about themselves, I asked Jara to tell me her life story. I learned that Mataji had shown saintly qualities even as a young child. Although she was married at an early age, as is the custom in India, she did not consummate the relationship because of her singular devotion to God. Nevertheless, as befits a genuinely good person, Mataji personally chose another wife for her husband, who desired to raise a family. When the second wife died several years later, Mataji, not forgetting her responsibility, sought out another wife for her husband. During all this time, Mataji applied herself to intense devotion to God. Her spiritual quest came to fruition when she visited Baba Fakir Chand, the renowned Shabad Yoga master. At their first meeting, Baba Fakir Chand declared that the young woman was already a saint. And on that very day, Fakir also appointed her a guru for a number of his women disciples. She has since then been affectionately addressed as Mataji, Mother Dear. On the night of my arrival at Manav Mandir, Dr. Jora invited me to visit Mataji. I readily agreed to the doctor's kind invitation and was startled when I first saw Mataji as she opened the door to her cloister. I had met her before. Her face also bore an expression of surprised recognition. We had met 3 years earlier in the home of our mutual friend, Swami Yogeshwar, an elderly Christian monk. At that time, I had not been informed of Mataji's exalted status, but I clearly remembered her exuberant smile and loving eyes. Mataji immediately gave me a strong hug, welcoming me as if I were one of her children. Mataji exuded a sense of joy and happiness. We talked for more than 3 hours about a variety of subjects, but I was most intrigued with Mataji's experiences on the inner spiritual planes. I asked her what it was like to leave the body. Mataji responded with a beautiful description of how consciousness can be released from the mortal frame by attaching itself to the stream of celestial music radiating from the top of the head and beyond. To do this, she said, one must first be initiated by a genuine mystic who has gained access to the higher realms. The practice itself, although it may take years to master, sounds relatively simple. The body should be kept perfectly still, with one particular posture held for at least 3 hours. One may choose a cross-legged position, like the yogis in the lotus pose, or a more comfortable, relaxed position in a chair. Keeping the back erect and the mind alert, one continuously repeats God's name as given by his or her guru. This Simran, as Mataji termed it, should be done with one's attention centered behind closed eyes. Coupled with this physical stillness and ceaseless repetition of God's name, the next step is to contemplate the light within. At first, Mataji pointed out, there will only be darkness, but eventually, light will appear in the form of either small flashes or small star-like points. In any case, one should focus on the radiance, keeping one's Simran intact and allowing the light to draw the soul inward. The third and most important step, Mataji said, is to listen to the sound that issues forth from the light. It is this internal music which will numb the body and allow the consciousness to leave its ordinary dwelling. By riding this current of light and sound, like a fish going upstream, the soul will be able to go back to its original home. On the journey within, however, the soul must be guided by a true master so as not to be detained in any of the lower, illusory regions. According to Mataji, what near-death patients experience is only the beginning of a vast sojourn into great universes of light, love, and beauty. Personally, I was overcome with the profundity of Mataji's account. Although it seemed plausible, especially given the findings of near-death patients who have been resuscitated, the soul's journey in the beginning stages appeared too difficult. How can one sit so still, repeat only holy names, and think of God constantly? By falling in love, Mataji answered serenely, because when one is truly in love, nothing but the beloved can enter one's mind. So the secret of Surat Shabad Yoga and of mysticism, she goaded, is not necessarily practice and more practice, but love. To be so devoted to one's Lord that nothing can stand in the way. This, and nothing else, is the truth of Sant Mat, Mataji stressed. It was hard for me to leave Mataji that night after such a peaceful and delightful visit. I did, however, see the dear mother one more time before my departure. Early in the morning I was ushered into her room to pay my respects, and also to thank her for the previous night's delightful conversation. However, I was a bit surprised when I saw Mataji. She was smoking a small Indian cigarette. Now I must confess that I didn't imagine that yogis, especially female yogis, smoked tobacco. But here was Mataji doing exactly that and puffing away nonchalantly, completely oblivious to my childlike notions of how gurus should behave. But after a few moments, I realized how stupid I was in being surprised by the simple act of Mataji's smoking. In the West, we sometimes wrongly assume that masters and sages are non-human, as if they didn't get hungry, didn't get sleepy, or didn't urinate. This is not the case, of course, and every mystic I have met is thoroughly human. Each have their own peculiar tastes and dislikes. Each are very normal in their own way. What makes these individuals distinctive is their steadfast devotion to discover the truth within themselves. Instead of searching outside for peace, these mystics focus the majority of their energy to seek the truth within. Spend any time with such enlightened sages, and you will automatically feel the pull to do the same. I think this is perhaps what impressed me the most about Mataji. She put on absolutely no airs about her attainment. She was down to earth, personable, affectionate, and not self-conscious, in the bad sense of that term, in the least. She was simply delightful, and I found myself won over by her graceful, natural charm. It was also at that moment when I realized the extent of Mataji's enlightenment. As I bowed my head to say goodbye to the smoking mother, Mataji said with a smile, "You are my Maharaj, my Guru." At first, I was a bit thrown off. I reflected to myself, what could she possibly mean by that statement? I don't even know how to get train directions from Delhi to Hoshiarpur, much less know the inner secrets of the universe. Then it struck me, and I understood her meaning. Instead of seeing God in only one form, Mataji sees God in every form, even in someone as completely ignorant as myself. To Mataji, the beautiful saint of Manav Mandir, there isn't just one God and many sinful creatures, or a God of light and a world of darkness. Rather, there is only one God manifesting throughout a myriad of forms. Postscript. I was pleasantly surprised to learn from Mr. Bharat Bhusan that he has finally discovered the whereabouts of Yogini Mataji, Tripta Devi, a distinguished successor of the late Baba Fakir Chand. Reading through his narrative, I felt a flood of memories and feelings come back to me. I then became determined to see if I could retrieve some lost notes I had about my visit with her in the winter of 1981. After finally tracking them down, I must confess that I was startled by how emotional my remembrances were. It appears that I partially buried some of what happened on that illustrious night at Manav Mandir, where I had the good fortune to communicate at length with Yogini Mataji. Although the Enchanted Land, A Journey with the Saints of India, has a small chapter on her life and teachings. I don't think I conveyed how deeply centered she was in her own meditational experiences. Mataji spoke so eloquently about how the light literally radiates out of the Shabad, which is neither right or left, but manifestly straight from the center. Light showers like a fountain, but the key is to find where those radiances arise from in the first place. Finding the source of the light through dhyan naturally inclines one to find the source of the Shabad, which also peals resplendently. In my notes, I wrote down how Yogini Mataji was completely absorbed in describing the inner quest, and seemed a bit perplexed that I too hadn't experienced what she had in meditation penetrating into higher and higher regions of bliss. When all of a sudden, she looked at me very intensely, as if reaching into the very core of my personality, and asked me, "What do you want?" As she gazed directly into my eyes for a few minutes, I began to cry, and I replied with all the intensity of my youth that I just want to go home. Not to my physical home, of course, but rather to a place where I would finally feel content and at peace. What Charan Singh had said was the true resting place of all restless souls, Sak Khand. Yogini Mataji didn't reply, but just kept looking at me with an increased intensity. She then said a most remarkable thing to me, but without any pretense, and with utmost sincerity. "We can go right now. We can go to that infinite realm this very instant." She began to raise her hand, and I felt my entire body go numb, and I felt an overwhelming rush go throughout my body, as if all the oxygen in my corpus was going to be sucked up into a perfect vacuum. I knew, at least in that moment, that Yogini meant exactly what she had said, and all I had to do was let go. But I didn't have the capacity then to fully let go. I became scared, as one would be in a game of dare, where you intuited that the stakes were too high for one's own comfort or safety zone. Yogini almost immediately noticed my hesitancy and slowly withdrew back into her own being and fell into a meditative state. I can still recall that moment vividly. Perhaps if I were more mature, or if I was with Charan himself, I might have been more inclined to accept the offer so graciously given. However, I do know that I came away from that evening with a deep and abiding trust for Yogini Mataji. She wasn't a preacher in the classic Sant Mat mold. Rather, she was an absolute doer, engaged in the very practice that I had heard so many gurus advocate, but very rarely employ. I was depressed leaving her that night, since I knew I had missed an opportunity, and that later I might regret my own fear. I have met a large number of spiritual masters in my 40 years of research in India and Europe and America, and I can say without a moment's hesitation that Yogini Mataji was heads and shoulders above almost all of them. She was down to earth, focused, and completely without affectation. Reading what Yogini Mataji conveyed to Bharat Bhushan a few weeks ago in her father's home deeply impressed me and reminded me once again of Yogini Mataji's existential rebooting of traditional Sant Mat teachings and practice. She has apparently given up typical sadhana, saying that it too was Maya, and she has forsaken internal guru worship. Yogini Mataji also mentioned that she refuses to give formal initiation. I still fondly remember the very first time I met Yogini Mataji, when she was still a young woman at the age of 38. It was in July of 1978, on a balmy night just a day or so after Guru Purnima Day, when I had first met Baba Fakir Chand. I was lying down on a cot in Swami Yogeshwar Ananda Saraswati's room, listening to several different swamis and yogis talk about the inner journey. They had gathered in Hoshiarpur to pay their respects to Fakir Chand, but each of them were practitioners from different lineages. There was one initiate of Baba Bhaga Singh from Tarn Tarn, who was on close terms with Sawan Singh, another yogi who had done severe tapas and other austerities in the Himalayas. One gentleman in particular caught my gaze, as he was reportedly in a state of samadhi at that moment. Or perhaps our conversation turned him within. But the jewel in this eclectic gathering was Yogini Mataji, even though at the time I was unaware of her exalted status. She beamed with joy, and her smile was absolutely infectious. I never forgot her bright face. 3 years later, when I came back to Manav Mandir, I had heard several high-level satsangis speak of a woman saint who Fakir had appointed as a guru and as one of his spiritual successors, and who was very well regarded by all who came in contact with her. You can well imagine my utter surprise and joy when I went to go see this yogini, only to find out that it was the same radiant woman I had met 3 years prior. We had an instant connection. It has been nearly 30 years since I last saw Yogini Mataji. I probably will never go back to India in this lifetime, but if I did, I would like to have the darshan of this most remarkable woman once more. In my opinion, she, along with Professor Bhagat Ram Kamal, the current spiritual leader of Manav Mandir, understood Baba Fakir's radical message best. Instead of merely parroting the sage's wisdom, as some most obviously did after he died, these two individuals have lived it, and in so doing have developed their own deep understanding of his spiritual quest. I am often asked by seekers if there are any gurus in India that I can recommend. Knowing both Professor Bhagat Ram Kamal and Yogini Mataji on a personal basis, I can with great confidence recommend both, primarily because each of them do not act like typical gurus, nor do they relish a following or a name or an empire. What they desire, just as the late Baba Fakir Chand desired, was to know the truth, even if that truth contradicted everything they had previously known. As I write these last words, I am struck once again by Yogini Mataji's existential admissions. When asked by Bharat Bhushan what she dreamed about, she said quite pointedly, "I do not see any dreams. Param Dayal Dayalji did cut them." As for being a spiritual master, Yogini Mataji tersely replied, "I do not like delivering satsang. I am fed up with guruism. I will not give namdan to anyone." I don't think Fakir Chand could have said it better. I bow my head to this most wonderful woman, who in her own realizations has given up the game of gurudom. May we all be so liberated. Chapter 7. The Wrestler. Sri Pratap Singh. Listen to the secret sound, the real sound, which is inside you. The one no one talks of speaks the secret sound to himself, and he is the one who has made it all. Kabir. Very little is known in the West about the lineage of Radhaswami gurus at Taran Taran, a small Sikh city about 20 miles outside Amritsar. In the Punjab, however, the satsang is well known, and its following numbers in the thousands. I had hoped for several years to meet the then current head of the sect, Sri Pratap Singh, but it was not until August 1978 that I boarded a bus for Taran Taran. The name literally means a raft which carries one over a large body of water. A town famous for its large golden Gurdwara, holy Sikh temple. Once arrived there, I had to ask the local rickshawwallas for directions to the ashram. Pictures of a saintly-looking Sikh on display in many of the shops made me feel hopeful. Luckily, I found an old rickshaw driver who knew the way to the spiritual center. At the front of the compound, I met the ashram's gatekeeper, whose knowledge of English was exceeded only by my 5 words of Hindi. We greeted each other with a clear and drawn-out Radhaswami. I was ushered into an open, rather empty-looking courtyard. A few people, whom I took to be sadhus, were lying in some shade. The heat was 100 degrees, and the humidity felt like 90%. One of the first things I noticed in the ashram was a series of pictures of the different saints at Taran Taran. Most noticeable, in the center of the back wall, was a picture of the founder, Baba Bhaga Singh. He had a powerful lion-like face. There were also photographs of Sant Deva Singh, the second master in the lineage, and of the late Jagat Singh of Beas. It was around noontime when I saw Sri Pratap Singh. I liked him immediately. He has a large nose and a robust physique. While the saint of Tarn Tarn and I conversed, Kishori Lal Mani, the secretary of the Dera, acted as translator. We discussed the history of the group, and I discovered that Baba Singh was a disciple of Baba Jaimal Singh, one of the successors to the founder of Radhaswami. Bhaga Singh founded his satsang at Tarn Tarn in the early part of this century. After his death in 1944, Sawan Singh of Beas, who had been a close friend of the founder of the Tarn Tarn satsang, appointed Deva Singh to carry on the spiritual work. The current head, Sri Pratap Singh, was installed by Maharaj Charan Singh after Deva Singh's death in the early 1960s. The Taran Taran and Beas satsangs enjoy a friendly and unique association. The present leaders of the two centers are good friends, often seen together giving spiritual discourses. Pratap Singh discussed with me the practice of Shabad Yoga and how one might succeed in listening to the inner sound. He stressed the need to do as much Simran as possible, that is, the repetition of a holy name or names at the third eye center. His argument was that unless one concentrated one's attention during the day away from the exterior world, then, when one sat for meditation, the world, with all its attractions, would again arise within the mind. The several hours one devotes to meditation, Pratap Singh argued, were not enough, precisely because those hours were spent reminiscing about the day's events and not necessarily focusing on the task of going within. I was reminded during Pratap Singh's conversation of Jagat Singh's admonition to do Simran as if one were collecting or counting precious jewels. Each repetition of a word or words should be done with the mind fully attentive, much like a jeweler who inspects each diamond with meticulous care. Pratap Singh also displayed during this time a wonderful sense of curiosity. He seemed fascinated by my wristwatch and wanted to know how much it cost me in America. When I told him the price, I think it was around $20, he seemed duly impressed and thought I got a good deal. Indeed, I felt tempted to offer it to him, but knowing that gurus like Pratap Singh did not accept gifts, I thought it might be rude, so I held back. About this time, one of Pratap Singh's disciples brought us chai, tea, and apples. As we ate, Pratap Singh kept teasing his disciple in a playful way. Though I couldn't understand exactly what Pratap Singh was saying in Punjabi, it was obvious that both of them were having a good time. Pratap Singh's laughter was contagious, and I found myself laughing out loud, despite the fact that I had no clue about what was so funny. Indeed, it was Pratap Singh's sense of humor that I found so appealing. It is refreshing to be able to talk with a guru who does not take himself too seriously. From my travels and research, authentic gurus are not distant and aloof. Rather, they are like close family and relatives. In America, we have been misled by the influx of Indian pseudo-masters, who seem more devoted in taking your wallet to their personal bank than in taking your soul back to God. Thousands of Indians die every year from malnutrition, but certain God-realized gurus drive Rolls-Royces and live extravagantly off their devotees' contributions. Genuine gurus, of course, don't charge money, nor do they claim miraculous powers. They are, contrary to our misconceptions, normal human beings who have surrendered, not inflated, their egos out of love for God. Hence, legitimate masters are givers to humanity, not beggars. Perhaps no one has presented a clearer guide to the objective indices of a real saint than Julian P. Johnson in his landmark text, The Path of the Masters. Real masters never charge for their services, nor do they accept payment or any sort of material benefits from their instructions, or any sort of material benefits from their instructors. Masters never boast of their mastership or of their spiritual powers or attainments. If any man claims to have attained the highest in spiritual development, that claim of itself may be taken as conclusive proof that he has not attained so much. Masters never go about begging for their living. They are always self-supporting. A real master never performs miracles for public exhibition. On the other hand, it is a mistake to imagine that mystics are always engaged in prayer, fasting, or austerities, and not concerned with worldly activities. I quickly learned this is not the case. To be a saint does not mean that one gives up the world and its pleasures, but that one understands the changing nature behind the universe, and hence its unreality as a fixed and permanent structure. I must admit, however, that I was a bit shocked when Sri Pratap Singh informed me of his fondness for wrestling. The famed saint of Taran Taran, a wrestler? I could tell by the twinkle in his eye that he loved the sport. In fact, he described his recent contest with his friend, the late Dr. Randolph Stone, founder of polarity therapy, at the house of Maharaj Charan Singh, India's most revered saint. I don't know who won the contest, but if I were a betting man, I would place my money on the saint of Taran Taran. To be sure, Pratap Singh is a kind and wise guru, but he is also quite hefty and fit. I don't think Dr. Stone had a chance. Shaking Sri Pratap Singh's hand for the last time, feeling his grip growing tighter, I was very tempted to challenge the guru to an arm wrestle, but alas, I was too shy. Of course, Pratap Singh would have none of that, so he stood up and gave me a huge bear hug. To this day, I can still recall how strongly he squeezed me. I can also never forget the warmth and friendliness of the saint of Taran Taran. Chapter 8. The Master. Charan Singh. May your love of the form culminate in the love of the formless. Outward forms of worship are better than doing nothing at all, but we should not spend our whole life involved with these games. Charan. The Shabad Yoga guru who has the largest following in both India and around the world is Maharaj Charan Singh of Radhaswami Satsang, Beas. His following is said to be well over 1 million, a remarkable number considering that the esteemed saint does not advertise, and his disciples do not proselytize. Maharaj Charan Singh has drawn accolades from both followers and outsiders. As Professor Philip H. Ashby of Princeton University notes, the present master, Charan Singh, is the grandson of the great master who, before becoming master in 1951, was a lawyer in Sikandarpur in the Punjab. Born in 1916, a man of great physical and personal charm, even to non-satsangis, and now at the height of his intellectual and spiritual powers, he is obviously a worthy successor to the great master. As I can testify from personal conversations with him, and by observation of him in the midst of his most devout adherents, the leadership of an Indian religious sect, such as the Radhaswami Satsang of Beas, does not fall upon men who are charlatans or insincere, as some people in the West might suspect. Penetrating through the fervent adulation and worship of the colony, the objective non-adherent must admit to being in the presence of a highly gifted and spiritually sensitive leader. I have had the good fortune to meet Maharaj Charan Singh on 9 occasions. I will never forget the first time I saw the exalted saint in India in late July of 1978, in the midst of the intense summer monsoons. It was an amazing sight to see nearly 500,000 people from all over India come to pay their respects on the last Sunday in July. Each year, a bandara, spiritual celebration, is held in honor of the birthday, July 27, 1858, of Huzur Savan Singh, guru and grandfather of Maharaj Charan Singh, and pilgrims from all over India come to have the darshan, sight, of their beloved living master. Since I was staying in a hostel in Amritsar, some 30 miles away, I had to take a bus to reach the town of Beas. As I got off the bus at Beas in the early morning, I was astounded to find thousands of Indians converging on the Dera, as the colony is affectionately known, by every conceivable mode of transportation. The road from the little town of Beas to Dera Baba Jaimal Singh is about 3 miles. Along this pathway I saw Punjabis, Rajasthanis, Tibetans, Japanese, Europeans, and almost every nationality on earth, making their way to see Maharaj Charan Singh. There were mothers with week-old infants, grandfathers well over 90, rich men, beggars, the crippled and the blind, all of them eager to be in the company of this saint. The heat was intense, but it did not stop the determined pilgrims from filling the air with devotional hymns, laughter, and a growing sense of anticipation for what was to them the greatest occasion on earth. As I approached the Dera gates, I saw in the foreground the large, exquisite satsang ghar, a beautiful meeting hall in the center of the colony, which is visible for miles, its white domes topped with shimmering gold. I made my way to the large field just behind the satsang ghar, where Maharaj Charan Singh was to speak. I was told later that the crowd numbered well over 3 lakhs, 300,000. As far as my eyes could see, row upon row of men, women, and children sat cross-legged waiting for their beloved saint. When Maharaj Ji, as he is warmly called, ascended to the dais, a sigh of relief ran through the crowd. Once on the elevated platform, the sage, with his beige turban, long white beard, and sparkling eyes, bowed his head to the gadi, seat, which he was about to assume. I was told earlier that this was in respect for his own guru, Savan Singh, and for the audience that had congregated. For about 10 minutes, Maharaj Ji sat quietly, giving darshan to the multitude which had assembled to see him. It was an astonishing experience to sit with several 100,000 persons in total silence. After this brief but intensely moving period, Maharaj Charan Singh gave a discourse in Punjabi on the teachings of mystics in the Sant Mat tradition. Maharaj Ji's message was simple but profound. We are in essence drops of love from the sea of God. Because of our association with the mind and body, and our exclusive attachment to them, we have lost sight of our real self. Thus, God, in His infinite mercy, assumes the form of a saint in order to lead the soul back to its original home. Instead of limiting ourselves to sensual pleasures, which in the end leave us unhappy and discontented, Maharaj Ji stressed the need of surrendering our entire beings to the oceans of love of which we are intimately a part. To help us do this, Maharaj Ji advised the practice of Surat Shabad Yoga. By attuning ourselves to the life current which proceeds from the heart of Anami Purush in the form of light and sound, we could finally achieve union with our true self, thus finding the joy we seek. After the satsang, Maharaj Ji proceeded to the langar, a vast kitchen where sevadars, volunteer workers, were preparing food for the pilgrims. This meal, which is completely free, is provided daily in the Dera. On this occasion, however, there were 1 million chapatis, whole wheat tortillas, served. The task is enormous, but the langar runs smoothly under the tireless sevadars and Maharaj Charan Singh's expert guidance. As I walked around the Dera, undoubtedly the cleanest, best-kept town I have seen in India, I could not help thinking of its uniqueness. Who could have imagined 90 years ago that a somewhat obscure sadhu, living in the middle of a veritable wasteland, would be the seed for one of the world's largest spiritual centers. The lineage of saints at Beas is impressive. Jaimal Singh, the first in line, was one of the chief disciples and successors to Shiv Dayal Singh, the founder of Radhaswami. Upon his death in 1903, he was succeeded by his most devoted disciple, Sawan Singh. It was Sawan Singh, the great master, who built the foundation for Dera. Under his reign, the large Satsangar, which is T-shaped with several minarets, was constructed in the 1930s. He attracted a substantial following, men and women from all over the world. Jagat Singh, a distinguished chemistry professor, followed the great master in 1948. His leadership lasted for only 3 years. Nevertheless, he is revered as an example of a karma yogi who discharged his duties with love and detachment. Upon his death, Maharaj Charan Singh was appointed as the living Satguru. Jagat Singh had great regard for Maharaj Ji, once calling him Shah-en-Shah, King of Kings. Perhaps of all the masters at Beas, Maharaj Charan Singh has brought about the most social change. He has done away with caste restrictions in the colony, a more difficult thing to do than one might expect in post-Gandhi India. Maharaj Ji also has donated all of the spiritual property in his name, legally given to him by the previous master, Jagat Singh, which is worth millions of dollars, to a registered society. He himself, I learned, does not accept gifts, nor does he receive any money whatsoever for his services. Rather, Maharaj Charan Singh lives off his own earnings from a family farm in Sirsa. Unbelievable joy radiates from the faces of Maharaj Ji's followers at the Dera. The driving force in the colony is to be in the presence of their beloved master. This sacred play, as it's called, takes 2 major forms. 1. Whenever Maharaj Charan Singh is in his car, by some unknown, albeit accurate process, hundreds of people line the streets, anxious to get a glimpse of his face and gentle smile. And 2. Whenever work needs to be done around the center, volunteers eagerly sign up. Why? Because Maharaj Ji usually oversees the project. But in the Dera there is also a deep sense of mutual love. I was pleased to learn that real saints are not measured by the amount of worship or adulation they receive, but by the degree of service they themselves provide. In all of India, I found this distinction most apparent when I was in the company of Maharaj Charan Singh. As I left the beautiful spiritual colony at Beas, memories of James Hilton's Shangri-La came to mind. I remembered thinking as a child how wonderful it would be if such a place really existed. Leaving the Dera gates, I realized it was not a fantasy or an overly romantic dream. There really can be a paradise on earth, not determined by geographics, but by the devoted hearts of men and women. In such a place, where there are genuine saints, where human beings are sincere in their quests, then everything becomes transformed. Then there can truly be an enchanted land. Chapter 9. The Voyage. Going Within. O son of noble family, name, listen. Now the pure luminosity of the Dharmata is shining before you. Recognize it. O son of noble family, at this moment your state of mind is by nature pure emptiness. It does not possess any nature whatever, neither substance or quality such as color, but it is pure emptiness. This is the Dharmata. This mind of yours is inseparable luminosity and emptiness in the form of a great mass of light. It has no birth or death, therefore it is the Buddha of immortal light. To recognize this is all that is necessary. Tibetan Book of the Dead. In the following essay, I will occasionally mention an author's name and a publication date, so that the listener will have a better idea concerning the cited source material. In this chapter, we will focus our study on the Surat Shabad Yoga tradition of India, which, due to its clearly elaborated process and technique, offers a viable method for those interested in understanding and correlating mystical insights. Such a phenomenological analysis will hopefully enable us to nurture the seeds for a transpersonal science, one that meets the necessary requirements of a genuine scientific enterprise. As Ken Wilber, 1983, A, points out, 1. Instrumental injunction. This is always of the form, if you want to know this, do this. 2. Intuitive apprehension. This is a cognitive grasp, prehension, or immediate experience of the object domain or aspect of the object domain addressed by the injunction, that is, the immediate data apprehension. 3. Communal confirmation. This is a checking of results, apprehensions, or data, with others who have adequately completed the injunctive and apprehensive strands. Our examination, based largely upon the writings of the Radhaswami masters, including Shiv Dayal Singh, Sawan Singh, Baba Fakir Chand et al., and modern non-dual monistic thinkers, Ramana Maharishi, Da Free John, and Ken Wilber, will unfold as follows. A brief outline of Surat Shabad Yoga tradition and practice, especially in relation to other spiritual traditions, for example, Kundalini Yoga. B. A phenomenological description of how the Surat, soul, attention, leaves the physical body during meditation and commences an inner voyage of light and sound through vast regions of existence. C. A summation of how Surat Shabad Yoga can serve as a model methodology for first-hand encounters with spiritual realities, marking a safe and definitive program for future trans-empirical excursions. Overall, my thesis is that this type of undertaking, allowing for a deeper grasp of mystical dimensions, will help promote further studies in consciously induced near-death experiences that have a rigorous experiential and testable basis. Unlike other yogic disciplines in India, such as Kundalini, Surat Shabad Yoga does not advocate breath control, pranayama, or a series of physical postures, asanas, mudras, as part of its practice. Rather, it is concerned with withdrawing consciousness from the time apertures of the body, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, genitals, and alimentary canal, and transcending the corporeal frame and its limitations altogether. This is accomplished by attaching the mind's attention to an inner light and sound, which is believed to be radiating behind the proverbial 10th door, the third eye of the Hindus, anatomically located behind and slightly above the physical eyes. Shiv Dayal Singh, 1970. When consciousness becomes totally concentrated at this pivotal point between the worlds, the soul, according to the saints in this tradition, leaves the body and experiences in elevating degrees higher regions of bliss. The distinctive characteristic of Surat Shabad Yoga is its emphasis on listening to the inner sound current, known variously as Shabad, Nad, or audible life stream. It is through this union of the soul with the primordial music of the universe that the practice derives its name. Surat, soul, Shabad, sound current, yoga, union. To be able to achieve a consciously induced near-death state takes great effort. Hence, masters of this path emphasize a threefold method designed to still the mind and vacate the body. Simran, Dhyan, and Bhajan. Charan Singh, 1979. Simran, the repetition of a holy name or names, draws one's attention to the eye center, keeping thoughts from being scattered too far outside. Such sacred remembrance is similar in form to the use of a mantra or special prayer, except that the name or names are repeated silently with the mind and not with the tongue. This stage, according to practitioners, is the first and perhaps most difficult leg of meditation. Dhyan, contemplation within, is a technical procedure to hold one's attention at the third eye focus. In the beginning, this may be simply gazing into the darkness or reimagining the guru's face, etc. But it eventually develops into seeing light of various shapes. Out of this light appears the radiant form of one's spiritual master, who guides the neophyte on the inner voyage and becomes the central point of dhyan. Bhajan, listening to the celestial melody or sound, is the last and most important part of Surat Shabad Yoga, because it is the vehicle by which the meditator can travel to exalted planes of awareness. Whereas Simran draws and Dhyan holds the mind's attention, it is Bhajan that takes awareness on its upward ascent back to the supreme abode, Sachkhand. Naturally, mastery of Surat Shabad Yoga is not an overnight affair, but involves years of consistent application and struggle. The desired results, adepts in the tradition agree, being largely due to the earnestness and day-to-day practice of the seeker. The inner ascent. In due time, if the process is complete, the individual spirit, current, or substance is slowly withdrawn from the body. First, from the lower extremities, which become feelingless, and then from the rest of the body. The process is identical with that which takes place at the time of death, only this is voluntary, while that of death is involuntary. Eventually, he is able to pierce the veil that intervenes, which in reality is not thicker than the wing of a butterfly. And then he opens what is called the 10th door, and steps out into a new world. The body remains in the position in which he left it, quite senseless, but unharmed by the process. He is now in a world he never saw before. Julian P. Johnson, 1952. Before the inner voyage of light and sound can begin, the meditator must become adept at withdrawing his or her attention from the world and concentrating pointedly at the third eye center. Accordingly, when the neophyte has achieved even a modicum of success, having sensations of numbness just up to the solar plexus, flashes of light will begin to manifest. At first, it appears that the light is coming and going, causing the phenomenon of bright sparks. But in actuality, it is the mind that is ascending and descending. Charan Singh, 1958, 1967, 1973, 1979. The feeling of physical insensibility is one of the important acid tests to determine if the meditation process is proceeding correctly. Starting in the feet, numbness rises slowly through the lower extremities until the entire body feels like stone. When such a voluntary paralysis occurs, the meditator gravitates more to the inner universe than to the outer one. According to the masters, Julian P. Johnson, 1974, it is the function of Simran to instigate this type of benumbing impression, which releases the mind from its constructing hold on the material corpus. It is at this junction when the meditator senses an intense feeling of upward movement, as if being literally pulled by a magnetic force. This sucking effect is the direct result of one's attention moving inward, away from the outer orifices. Though it is but a preliminary stage, the student experiences firsthand what it is like to have an out-of-body sensation. With practice, the meditator finally does achieve total out-of-body consciousness, traveling at immense speeds through regions of darkness, not dissimilar in content to reports of clinically dead patients who have been resuscitated. Raymond Moody, 1975, Kenneth Ring, 1980, Darshan Singh, 1982. After complete withdrawal from the physical body, the neophyte's capacity for inner sight, nirat, and sound, surat, increases tremendously, enabling him or her to see and hear clearly what was only thought before to be a figment of religious imagination. Accompanying this ability is also the realization of a superconscious state of awareness, remarkably more vivid and lucid than the ordinary waking state. Sawan Singh, 1974. To understand how such a new degree of consciousness can be awakened, it is important to see how awareness moves through varying degrees of clarity. In the waking state, for instance, attention is centered behind the eyes at the back of the head. But after 18 hours or so, we notice a movement downward and inward from this station towards the throat. Jagat Singh, 1972. Culminating in sleep. Likewise, after about 8 hours, we sense a rising upward to the eyes, with the final termination being, of course, our normal everyday consciousness. In both of these cases, our common language expresses in a graphically simple way the process of awareness. We fall asleep, we wake up. My eyes are heavy. I feel so awake and high. In yoga psychology, the farther down one's consciousness descends, the deeper the sleep or unconscious state. The further up it ascends, the higher the awareness, superconscious. The pattern is quite clear. Clarity increases steadily the more one ascends, not vice versa. Ken Wilber, 1979-1981, has beautifully described this spectrum of consciousness as having a definite hierarchical structure, with the higher orders subsuming and transcending their lower counterparts. The following account, primarily based upon Shiv Dayal Singh's Hidayatnama, is filled with rich mythological characterizations, metaphors, and illustrations. For anyone steeped in science, the account will sound too fantastic to be true. However, we should keep in mind that although Shiv Dayal Singh's description may be limited to the analogies of the 19th century, his fundamental insights are consistent with mystics from time immemorial. When reading Shiv Dayal Singh's descriptions of the inner regions, we should also keep in mind that transrational experiences cannot be adequately contained by the inherent boundaries of human language. Let us not confuse a map for the real territory or a menu for the meal. The first region. Sahas Dal Kanwal, thousand-petaled lotus. When your eye turns inwards in the brain, and you see the firmament within, and your spirit leaves the body and rises upwards, you will see the Akash, in which is located Sahas Dal Kanwal, the 1,000 petals of which perform the various functions pertaining to the three worlds. Its effulgence will exhilarate your spirit. You will, at that stage, witness Niranjan, the Lord of three worlds. Several religions which attained this stage, and took the deity thereof to be the Lord of all, were duped. Seeing the light and refulgence of this region, they felt satiated. Their upward progress was stopped. They did not find the guide to higher regions, hence they could not proceed further. Shiv Dayal Singh, Hidayatnama. Although the wondrous journey out of the body in Surat Shabad Yoga meditation begins in darkness, eventually the meditator glimpses keen points of light, much like stars filling up a black midnight sky. The student is advised to focus his or her attention on the largest and brightest of these stars, Kirpal Singh, 1974, 1975, 1976, which, with repeated concentration, will burst, revealing a radiance similar to that of a sun, Sawan Singh, 1970-1974. When this light explodes, a brilliance comparable to a full moon will pull one's attention even further within. Out of that light, according to the masters, Julian P. Johnson, 1953, known as Asht Dal Kanwal, 8-petal lotus, the resplendent form of one's guru will appear. This marks the halfway point in the disciple's ascent, since, from here on, one is guided to the upper regions by the radiant form of the Master. Sawan Singh, 1974. Hence, it is by comparison an easier progression for the soul than the withdrawal of the mind current from the body, along with the seeing of light, consisting of different colors and hues, partly due to a particular person's karma, Fakir Chand, 1978. The meditator also hears a variety of different sounds. At first, as the concentration becomes finer, it will assume a more distinct tone, not dissimilar to the tinkling of bells. Indeed, it is the bell sound which is to be held on to, as its melody will help lead the soul into the first region, known technically in Radhaswami as Sahasdal Kanwal, but also termed in other traditions as the astral plane, Turiya Pad, etc. Swami Muktananda, 1974. Entrance into the pure astral plane, though heralded as a magnificent achievement, is, according to Saint Mat, but the beginning of the inner voyage. It is alleged by many saints in the tradition, Kabir, Tulsi Sahib, Sawan Singh, etc., that several great religious leaders mistakenly believed that the light and sound of this region were of the absolute Lord. Instead of realizing that the manifestations were partial glimpses of a higher reality, they worshipped them as the totality of God. This kind of error is perhaps the chief reason why the Sant Mat and Radhaswami movements stress so much the necessity of a living guide. Charan Singh, 1974. Above all else, the masters emphasize, test thoroughly whatever appears inside meditation. The main test advised by the mystics is to repeat slowly the holy name or names which were given at the time of initiation. Also, verify the authenticity of one's experiences with the outer guru for his or her validation. Each major region of consciousness has its own center and guiding lord. In Sahasdal Kanwal, the ruler is known as the Lord of Light, and is the creator of the entire universe in its jurisdiction. Julian P. Johnson, 1974. However, the extent of each ruler's power is limited and circumscribed by the next higher deity, who likewise receives its creative energy from above, etc. This governing hierarchy, like the Kundalini chakra system, is based on the concept that all spiritual evolution, and even material transformation, was preceded by an involution. Charan Singh, 1973. Therefore, the meditator must pass through several regions of light and sound before attaining true enlightenment. In order to overcome the many barriers and obstacles on the way, the guru instructs the student not to attach him or herself to any particular vision, as they are merely signposts along the way. Charan Singh, 1979, Fakir Chand, 1976. In fact, all of the intermediary lords or centers of power are not to be venerated, but transcended. It is for this reason that the Beas branch of the Radhaswamis and Sawan Kripal mission, in agreement with previous saints, give out 5 holy names as their meditation mantra. Each name represents the presiding lord and his relative spiritual energy. To the meditator, they serve as passwords, so to say, to ensure safe passage into the next level of consciousness. Charan Singh, 1973. Obviously, the concern here is that a student may get stuck or retained in one of the lower realms, believing that he or she has reached the ultimate, when, in fact, what they have attained is illusory and impermanent. Surat Shabad Yoga literature is replete with stories of would-be masters who have been duped on the inner journey. For instance, see the book Anurag Sagar, which goes on in detail about sages being misled in their meditations. The second region, Trakudi, 3 prominences. At the apex of this Akash in Sahasdal Kanwal, there is a passage which is very small, like the eye of a needle. Your Surat, spirit, should penetrate this eye. Further on, there is Banknal, the crooked path, which goes straight and then downwards and again upwards. Beyond this passage comes the second stage. Trakuti, having 3 prominences, is situated here. It is 1 lakh yojan in length and 1 lakh yojan in width, millions of miles in inner space, an expression describing tremendous dimensions. There are numerous varieties of glories and spectacles at that plane, which are difficult to describe. Thousands of suns and moons look pale in comparison to the light there. All the time, melodious sounds of ong-ong and hoo-hoo, and sounds resembling thunder of clouds reverberate there. On obtaining this region, the spirit becomes very happy, and purified and subtle. It is from here onwards that it becomes cognizant of the spiritual reasons. Shiv Dayal Singh, Hidayat Nama. Progression to successively higher regions of existence is secured in Radhaswami and Sant Mat through listening to the finer Shabad sound melodies. As remarked before, it is the bell sound which leads the soul into the first region. Subsequently, access to the next stage, Trakuti, is garnered by attaching one's attention to the powerful rhythm of drums or clashing thunder. However, on the sojourn between the first and second regions, one must pass through Bank Nal, a crooked tunnel which can ward off spirits from progressing further. An interesting description of this particular stage comes from a letter written by a disciple of Sawan Singh, dated January 30, 1945. Rai Sab Munshi Ram, 1974. My progress again started from 9th January. Sometimes I could see light and get some taste, but there was not upward progress. One day I saw 3 paths, and after many days my soul started following the middle one. It is not a straight path, but a sort of crooked tunnel, which goes on narrowing as one moves forward. At one place it was so narrow that I had to crawl forward on my stomach. There were many snakes and scorpions in this path, but through your mercy they all appeared dead and did no harm to me. I felt absolutely no fear, because I was conscious all the time of your presence and your Shabad form. Further on, the path narrowed still more, and a sinner like myself could never get through it without your mercy and grace. It is like a round tunnel, and it is all lightened up with a beautiful circular light, like that of the morning sun. It appears as if the sun is rising. I tried to pass through this sun, but could not do so, and therefore came back through this tunnel. This happened about 2 or 3 days ago. Trakuti, so named because of the 3 huge mountains of light situated there, is the home of the universal mind where individual karmas have their origin. Saints point out that this region is the most difficult to traverse because it means surrendering one's mind entirely. Since such a task is almost impossible immediately, the soul stays within the boundaries of the second stage for a considerable duration. The spectacles of Trakuti are reported to be so enticing and spectacular that the meditator often does not want to go on further. Indeed, the inner master sometimes prevents the student from beholding the sights in fear that he or she will become too saturated with joy and forget his or her real mission. Ra Sab Munshi Ram, 1974. Fakir Chand, a radical teacher in the Radhaswami movement, who presented a number of startling interpretations on the nature of religious visions, Lane, 1983, believed on the basis of over 70 years of meditation that the reason Trakuti is so hard to overcome is due to the fact that whatsoever one desires, it manifests accordingly. Literally, worlds upon worlds can be created by sheer thought in the second stage. Thus, the soul can be trapped in an infinite set of cravings, wants, and wishes, which continually attract the mind to the ephemeral pleasures. Fakir Chand, 1976. Furthermore, in the grand design of the cosmos, there is a negative force whose sole purpose is to detain the soul from transcending to higher states. This power is known as Kal, time, death, the lord of the mind in the terminology of the saints in the Sant Mat and Radhaswami traditions. Julian P. Johnson, 1974. Kal is the antithesis of the positive current, Sat, which constantly goes back to the Supreme Lord, Anami Purush. Kal's force is downward instead of upward toward the creation. Hence, Kal, though also a manifestation of the Absolute on a lower vibration, represents the main obstacle in the ascent of the soul. The only way a sincere student can conquer Trikuti is by withdrawing the spirit from the mind itself, just as the mind separated from the body. The third region, Daswandwar, the 10th door. The refulgence of this region, Daswandwar, is 12 times that of Trikuti. Pure pools of ambrosia, called Mansarovar, abound here. There are innumerable flowers and gardens. Spirits, like beauties, dance at various places. At every place, fountains of nectar are overflowing, and the streams of nectar are gushing out. How may one describe the splendor and decoration of this region? There are platforms of diamonds, beds of emeralds, and plants of jewels, all studded with rubies and precious stones. Bejeweled fish, swimming in pools there, display their beauty and ornamentation, and their glitter and sheen attract attention. Beyond this, there are innumerable palaces of crystals and mirrors, in which spirit entities reside at their respective spots, as allocated by the Lord. The denizens there are spiritual and free from physical taints. Full particulars of these regions are known only to Sants. It is not meet to describe them in greater detail. Shiv Dayal Singh, Hidyatnama. Certain saints report that there are 10 passageways into Trikuti. The first 9 are local, leading the aspirant only to outlying parts of the second stage. The 10th door, though, opens up into the third region, a dimension beyond mind and matter appropriately entitled Daswandwar, 10th door, so named because of the key passageway in Trikuti. The third region is especially auspicious, since the student leaves the mind plane altogether and realizes for the first time his or her true self, as a pure drop of infinite light and love. From Daswandwar, the pull is inherently upwards. No longer does Kal's negative power attract the free spirit. Like a butterfly, liberated from its inhibiting cocoon, the soul flies forth unencumbered to its original and true abode. The lord of this region is known as the Detached One, and the Shabad manifests as a sarangi, a stringed instrument, with white light shimmering like diamonds. Daswandwar's refulgence is so brilliant that it dims 12-fold the reddish light of Trikuti. Although the sound current is one constantly audible life stream, it has 4 major gradations: Anahad, unstruck; Sar, essential; Sat, true; and Nij, original. For instance, in the third region, the Shabad transforms from Anahad into Sar, which is the movement from the mind to the soul current. Progressively, Sar Shabad leads into Sat Shabad, which finally ushers in the Nij current of the Supreme Lord, who is absolute beyond all expression. Bubba Da Free John, 1977. One of the central attractions in the third region is Mansarovar, a vast pool of immortality, wherein the soul is cleansed of residual samskaras, past impressions. Elucidates Sawan Singh, 1970. When the Sikh gurus built the Golden Temple at what is now the city of Amritsar, they surrounded it with a pool of water to represent on earth the Mansarovar pool or lake of the third spiritual region. This pool they called Amritsar, which has the same meaning as Mansarovar, the pool of the nectar of immortality. In the same way, the Indian rishis and munis, sages and holy men of the past, called the confluence of the Ganges, Jamuna, and the now vanished Saraswati, Tribeni, to symbolize on earth the meeting place of the 3 great streams of refulgent light in Daswandwar. But the real thing that gives liberation lies within and not without. Although self-realization is achieved in Daswandwar, the student has not merged back totally with the Supreme One. Consciousness is identified with the drop, bubble, but not yet with the ocean of love in its awesome entirety. Thus, the soul must evolve even further to achieve full Jivan Mukti, liberation while living. The face of the self has been discovered. Consciousness beyond body and mind is experienced to be the true reality. But the primordial body of the Absolute remains unattained. Savan Singh, 1974. Perhaps the most frightening phase in the meditator's exploration is through the region known as Mahasun, Great Void, which is located between Daswandwar and Banwar Gufa. Though the soul is said to contain the light of 12 suns, its brilliance is blinded by the impenetrable darkness that precedes the fourth region. In fact, saints rarely discuss this stage, as it can only be crossed with the help of the inner guru. Outlines Shiv Dayal Singh, 1970, of this plane. Having sojourned there, Daswandwar, and having enjoyed the glory thereof for a very long time, the spirit of this fakir proceeded on, in accordance with the instruction of the guides. After traversing 5 Arab, 1,000 million, and 75 crore yojans upwards, the spirit entity effected ingress into the bounds of Hahut and witnessed the panorama of that region. There, the expanse of 10 Niel, 1,000 million, is enveloped in darkness. Depth of this dark region cannot be fathomed. The spirit went down 1 Karab Yojans. Still the bottom was nowhere to be found. Then it, the spirit, turned up and proceeded on the path chalked out by Guru. It was not considered advisable to go right down to the bottom of this region. This region is called Mahasun. There are prison cells for the condemned spirits, ejected from the court of the true Supreme Being. Although these spirits are not subjected to any trouble, and they perform their functions by their own light, yet, as they do not get the darshan of the Lord, they are restless. However, there is a way of their remission also. Whenever saints happen to pass that way, with spirits reclaimed from the lower regions, some of these spirits, fortunately, get their darshan. Such spirits go along with the saints, who very gladly take them to the court of the Lord and get them pardoned. To cross the abyss without such a guide is impossible, according to the masters. Shiv Dayal Singh, 1970. Because the ascent is not self-centered but God-centered, involving the Maj, will, grace, of the Supreme Lord. In a sense, what we are witnessing is the ultimate surrender. First, the physical body has to be given up, sensory paralysis, out-of-body experience, etc. Then the lower and higher mind, in the stages of Sahasdal Kanwal and Trakuti, and finally the soul itself in Sachkhand, which is nothing but a mere bubble in the ocean of infinity. The fourth region, Banwar Gufa, Whirling Cave. The spirit thereafter went to Hutal Hut, which in Hindi has been described as Banwar Gufa. There is a rotating swing here, which all the time in subtle motion and the spirits ever swing on it. All round there are innumerable spiritual islands, from which the sounds of Sohang Sohang and Anahu Anahu rise all the time. Spirit entities playfully and rapturously enjoy these sounds. Whiffs of scents of various kinds and sweet fragrance of sandal are enjoyed by the spirit there, and the melodies of flutes are heard, while it proceeds onwards. Other characteristics of this region cannot be reduced to writing, as they can be realized by the spirit only when it reaches there, after performing abhyas. Shiv Dayal Singh, Hidyatnama. Upon arriving in Banwar Gufa, the soul's Nirat, power to see, and Surat, capacity to hear, attain a state of satisfaction. Julian P. Johnson, 1953. This contentment, according to Shiv Dayal Singh's account, is due to perceiving a most intriguing and wondrous structure within the Rukmini tunnel, in the entrance to the fourth region. Exactly what this site is has not been explained by any Radhaswami saint in print. Like all experiences in the upper regions, it must be encountered firsthand to be understood, not simply referenced in its decidedly mythological analogies. Banwar Gufa is the funnel of the entire creative process from Sachkhand downwards. Its very name exhibits the tremendous power inherent within the region, whirling vortice. The lord of this realm is termed Sohang, I am that, a descriptive mantric term which implies a conscious intuition on the part of the soul with its higher identity. The Shabad currents in Banwar Gufa are so sweet and enchanting, according to the saints, that souls live entirely off its invigorating nectar, desiring nothing but darshan of the presiding Lord and the manifestations of light and sound. Kabir, the most famous of the medieval saints, describes in his writings, or at least those attributed to his pen, how Hansas, pure spirits, live on spiritual dweeps, islands, with magnificent palaces, for transmundane enjoyment. Fakir Chand, in his Yogic Philosophy of the Saints, 1980, gives a more psychological interpretation of the meditator's experience in the fourth region. When, in the course of meditation, man reaches this state of Banwar Gufa, he experiences that there was none except his own self. This center is compared with Banwar, which means whirl. At the center, a wheel rotates like a cradle. It means that at this center, a wave springs out of the surat of the meditator and again merges with its own source. Or, say, it rotates around its own source and produces the sound of Sohang flute. The Shabad of this center is so effective that the meditator enjoys the pleasure of being one with the Supreme Soul. The fifth region, Sachkhand, the true realm. On crossing this place, the spirit entity reached the outpost of Sat Lok, where melodious sounds of Sat Sat and Hak Hak were heard, as though coming out of a veena, harp. On hearing this, the spirit penetrated further on rapturously. There rose to view the silver and golden streams full of nectar, and vast gardens. Each tree thereof is 1 crore yojans in height, and crores of suns and moons hang from them as flowers and fruits. Innumerable spirits and hansas sing, chatter, and play on those trees like birds. The wondrous beauty of this region is ineffable. While enjoying it, the spirit entered Sat Lok and came into the presence of Sat Purush. Now, as regards the glory of the person of Sat Purush, each hair of his is so brilliant that crores of suns and moons look pale in comparison. How may one describe his eyes, nose, ears, face, hands, and feet? They are all nothing but refulgence. Even to describe them as oceans of light does not give the remotest idea adequately. After witnessing the glory of this region, the spirit proceeded on to Alak Lok and got darshan of Alak Purush. Thereafter the spirit entity went on and attained Agam Lok. The spirit entity sojourned there a long time, and on going beyond, it got the darshan of Radhaswami, that is, Anami Purush, and merged in him. Radhaswami Dham is boundless, infinite, endless, and immeasurable. It is the Nij Stan, the special resting place of the saints, fakirs. That region is the ultima thule of all saints, and all speech and description end here. Shiv Dayal Singh, Hidyatnama. Though it has been a long time coming, the soul, after traversing the lower realms, finally reaches its home, Sachkhand, true region. where even the subtlest duality between spirit and God are transcended. The Supreme Being, Sat Chit Ananda, truth, existence, bliss, is found in its pure form only in this region, the saints stress. All the previous planes of existence are but reflections of this infinite abode. Shiv Dayal Singh, 1970. On being admitted to Satpurusha's court, the soul revels in delight, for the inner guru has delivered what he promised, God realization. However, a curious thing happens when the student beholds the Supreme Lord for the first time. The guru is seen as not different from Satpurush, but rather they are one and inseparable. All along, it was not just a human being, or an inner spirit guiding the yearning soul, but according to the saints, the Absolute itself. Now, at this crucial transformation, the student realizes the supreme truth that he or she is also not separate from the Divine Master or the Lord, but in eternal unity with them. This enlightenment, unlike the partial glimpses of insight in the intermediary realms, is permanent and lasting. It is the root of all manifestations, projections, and creations. One without a second, infinity without measure. Although Satchkhand is the last and final stage according to the saints, there are 3 further levels within it of intensification. Alak, invisible, Agam, inaccessible, and Anami, nameless. Upon merging with the Satpurush, the spirit is taken up further into the very depths of the Absolute, experiencing what no words or approximations can adequately describe. Shiv Dayal Singh, 1970, says, "It is but wonder, wonder, wonder. Wonder hath assumed a form." Fakir Chand, in his usual iconoclastic manner, describes the highest state as follows. Beyond Agam is only realization. I do know that there is something in me that listens to the supreme Shabad. What is that? That I do not know. I used to listen to bells, thunders, and vina, but now I listen only to one sound, which is an unbreakable tune about which I cannot say any word. It is what it is. Now at this age of 92 years, I do not care for the sound and light too. Why? Because light is seen by me, Satpurush, Anami, and sound is heard by me. Then who is great? Light or sound, or he who sees it and listens to it? So far as my realization is concerned, bubble will merge in the ocean. Light will merge in the light. Fakir Chand, 1978. According to the saints, it should be remembered that Satpurush is not some mysterious God which is vastly greater than our limited selves. Rather, it is, in the most profound sense, our very beings. We are not less than it, nor greater than it. We are it. No subject, no object, just pure, unqualified being in an ocean of infinite creative power. It may appear that the Master and God are separate from the disciple, but in truth, they are but expressions of the same whole, the same one. Charan Singh, 1979. Chapter 10. Seeds for a Future Science. Shabad Yoga as an experimental methodology for transempirical regions of awareness. The preceding phenomenological description of the soul's ascent, although undoubtedly fascinating, leaves many problems and unanswered questions, not the least of which concerns the notion of self-realization and God-realization. Though we have seen, in a rather armchair fashion, what occurs to consciousness during Surat Shabad Yoga meditations, the ultimate validity of such a process has been left unexamined. For instance, what is considered to be the goal in Kundalini Yoga, Sahasrara Chakra, is regarded as but the first stage in Shabad Yoga. Likewise, Jnana Yoga, the causal path of knowledge, posits that its method bypasses both Kundalini and Shabad by directly inquiring into one's conscious existence. the source of awareness itself. Bubba Da Free John, 1977. Hence, what we have here is not only a conflict in transpersonal methodologies, but a paradox over what constitutes ultimate truth and beauty. Is Shabad Yoga higher than Kundalini? Does the Advaita Vedanta tradition, Jnana Yoga, transcend all other spiritual disciplines? The answers, of course, are not easy or forthcoming, except if we happen to belong to a particular school of thought and are consciously or unconsciously prejudiced in our analysis. Lane, 1984. Instead of resorting to quick and premature conclusions so as to resolve an emotional religious debate, what is needed is a suspension of belief and a program for action which incorporates experientially the various techniques outlined in the contrasting yogic systems. Our purpose here will not be so much to determine which path is higher, but to correlate the findings in an intelligent and comprehensive way. Surat Shabad Yoga, I suggest, is quite suitable for such a scientific endeavor in that it lends itself to a series of repeatable experiments. With a group of like-minded experimenters, fruitful discussions and intersubjective dialogues can be based upon direct mystical encounters instead of just imaginative philosophical speculation. Ken Wilber, 1983. Although many religious advocates claim that mysticism cannot be reduced to science, it should be understood that what goes under the name of spirituality is not exempt from rational inspection. Rather, I would argue, it is not only viable that mystical insights come to the public eye for closer scrutiny, it is necessary. We can no longer turn our backs to the glaring fact that the most important issues in life, the purpose of human beings, life after death, the concept of God, etc., are often left to the closed systems of dogma and ritual. Genuine science, in the larger context of the term, is naturally amiable to purview any event in human life, if only allowed a reasonable chance. We are, though most of us do not like to admit it, scared of that which we are not sure of. How does the Kundalini yogi, or the Shabad yogi, or the Jnana yogi know that he or she has the highest path? Regardless of what we may argue or wish to be the case, the bottom line in all religious aspirations is that we do not know absolutely. This ignorance, instead of being something to fear, should be made the very basis of our transpersonal science. Science, in the end, does not provide ultimate knowledge, but presents an ever-widening vision of human life. The necessary seeds for nurturing this larger perspective are more actual experiments in consciousness studies and less juxtapositioning of doctrines. Though we may not want to live in a world void of certainty, reality rejoices in it, with change being the only constant knowable. Hence, Surat Shabad Yoga should be utilized as a practical methodology for transpersonal experiences with the keen understanding beforehand that it will serve as a tool for an open system of investigation, one which accepts the writings of previous masters as useful guidelines, but not as unquestionable books of dogma and law. Charan Singh, 1967. Only in this way can such a yogic discipline be regarded as scientific. It is my contention that the future of transpersonal psychology depends more on the actual transformation of individuals or communities via rigorous spiritual experimentation than the endless theoretical debates between scholars over which path is highest, fastest, and most reliable. Roadmaps go a long way, no doubt, in helping one find direction, but they do not take a would-be traveler anywhere.